Welcome to the Mad Ones and happy early Valentine's Day. I'm your extremely handsome and hopeless romantic host, Cam Harless, and with me as always is your doesn't celebrate Valentine's Day on Valentine's Day because working in a restaurant on Valentine's Day is her own personal Vietnam hostess, Miss
That's
Jessica
right.
Green.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing my personal struggle. Um, Anybody who out there who's worked as a server or wait staff during that holiday knows that it's like basically our, Holocaust. It's our Vietnam. Like, yeah, that's really accurate. Like,
Yeah, it's like when I've worked in retail, especially when I worked at the leather store, Black Friday was just awful.
yeah.
Just an awful situation, not fun. But so I understand it just from a, different perspective.
I survived, but we don't go out on Valentine's Day. Like my husband is like, "You want to go to a restaurant?" And I was like, "I would rather die."
You know what I just realized? I should have maybe I'll do it for the next week. No promises. I should have made the green fire pink or red for Valentine's Day.
Mm,
But no, I don't think about these
I would
things
love
until it's
that.
playing. All right. So, as you know, this show is brought to you 100% by the fans and the patrons. So hit like, subscribe, join our Patreon for the occasional early episode, Zoom
Mhm.
hangout, and for some reason, I still have the word gratification written down. I can't remember the other word. I will be
Well, now I
grateful
don't.
forever for you.
Great.
Patreon.com/the Mad Ones. Also, grab a shirt, a mug, or a tank top at wearethemadOnes.com/store, and you can just take our little logo everywhere with you. And people
Mhm.
will be like, "Hey, what's that?" And you'll lie and say it's a band, and then they'll
I
never
do.
find us.
Yeah.
So
I'm literally one of the hosts of the show, and when people ask me what it is, I tell them it's a band.
yeah, bad. But we have maybe the most handsome man you've ever seen in your life about to join us. So let me introduce our guest. You may have heard of him. Joining us tonight is a man of legend, nay, a god in human form, the official thirst trap of the propaganda report, the handsomest man in the conspiracy game, a hero in the games of improv, the actor who will be taking over for Harrison Ford in the next Indiana Jones, a very funny man, and a better friend, my personal Valentine, Mr. Brad Binkley. How you
Yay.
Hey,
doing,
happy
buddy?
Valentine's Day, Jessica and Cam, especially you, Cam.
Mwah.
I been thinking about you in that tank top for a long, long time.
I mean, you can see all of the tattoos this way.
I know it is the best version of Cam that I see in my dreams on a regular basis. I'm happy to spend this Valentine's Day show. I'm sorry to do this in front of you, Jessica. I sent you a bunch of
didn't.
pictures of my feet, Cam. Jessica, I spared
Thank
you. I
you.
know you have a husband, so I didn't
Wow,
send you
thank
all my
you.
foot pics. But
Yeah,
And I'll
because
send you those paw pictures later.
yeah, I want to see the paw pictures. I would really love to see that. Commit to turning
Ooh,
yourself into a real dog, is what I
I'm
say.
working on it. I'm working on it. You see the hair, you see the beard. It's just the rest of it has to fill in.
Right. Yeah, it comes. It comes and goes. See, we had those hacks who just put on the furry dog suits. It's just like you're not really trying to be a dog. You're just trying to be a person in a dog suit.
that is
Become a
cheating.
dog.
Like a lesser
Absolutely.
Chewbacca.
Yeah.
Like a lesser Peter Mayhew. Like
That's good.
Oh, that's really good.
it's not as good as I
Yeah.
can get it, but I mean it's all right. Thank you.
Have
Thank
a
you.
few more have a few more bourbons and then we'll
Yeah,
try
a
it
few more
again.
drinks and let's get into that Chewbacca.
Yeah.
Speaking of Star
God, this
Wars,
episode's
though.
gonna be weird.
It's gonna be super weird. Let's.
Yeah. Speaking of Star Wars, though, did you go on Twitter today, Brad?
I did briefly. I didn't see Star Wars related stuff. I don't think.
Well, when I first got on Twitter today, the first thing that I saw was a bunch of saggy boobies. And
I saw that for sure.
And I thought for sure I'd walked into the Mos Eisley Cantina when I saw that picture. Like that was whatever it was didn't look right to me. And I like boobies. Did they just like have auditions for like the worst boobies?
They're trying to make us not like boobs. Is what they're trying to do. Which is just trying to make them not like.
They found the worst boobs for that. They didn't even try. They're just
I
like,
can
"Go
imagine the
cover."
casting call for that. It's like looking
No,
for the
I know.
weirdest, funkiest boobs.
They ran out into the street and they gathered the first 100 females they could find, regardless
They took
And
a
they took-
ruler and they said your boobs have to be longer than 9 inches, or we're not putting you on this.
They went to one of those homeless encampments in San Francisco. Started snapping photos.
Well, these ladies need jobs, so I don't.
Right,
hate
they
it.
probably got paid. You know, I'm
Right,
sure they ripped them
right.
off because the web. So it used to be if you do like a job like that, you get a lot of money. But when things started becoming digital, they found like loopholes
Yeah.
where they could rip people off. So they probably just gave
I
them a
still
sandwich
feel
or something.
like
Well,
I
they
still
ripped
feel
off
like
their
we're the
bras,
ones.
it looked like.
Yeah, and I feel like we're the ones that got ripped off, really, in all of this.
We definitely did. They
Yeah.
want to taint our image of boobs. Did you guys see the retort that somebody made? Justin showed it in that locals live stream I was doing a while ago. I think you might have been gone by then, Cam, but somebody put together a bunch of penises, which that's obviously the next step.
Unfortunately, I saw that.
And it was some strange penises. But
They're
I
all
feel
strange.
included.
You feel seen. You feel
I feel
represented.
heard. I feel Stacey Abrams. Everything she says is right.
It's like when Captain
You looked
Marvel
at a
came out.
bunch of dicks, and then you agreed with Stacey Abrams.
Yes, that's whenever I see a bunch of big dicks, I agree with
Yeah.
Stacey Abrams.
I mean,
Wow,
why wouldn't you?
it's the cock to Stacey Abrams pipeline.
That's and that
Yeah.
there's a pipeline in Georgia for that too. I'm in line. I got I'm like ticket 75. I'm just trying to get in there.
There's like a deli pull down number thing that you like.
Totally.
I was just gonna say
And
though,
Binkley's
what was great
75,
about
like
what was great about that picture though was it's like, you know, when Captain Marvel came out, the first ever female superhero who had her own movie ever, and women were like, wow, I'm finally represented, and that picture of all those weird penises got me right there. I understand
I know
why
so
women
many guys. I've seen so
want
many
that now.
penises just like that. Yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
like hundreds of penises
Yeah.
exactly like those who felt unheard. Like I used to go around talking to people with weird penises. Like, what's it like? You know, they're like, nobody knows me, nobody cares about my dick. And like, well, now they do. Adidas.
Now they do. Yeah. I felt like an
Yeah.
African American after watching Black Panther.
Right.
Oh,
That's
I
the intent.
was seen.
Yeah.
Because Blade wasn't a superhero movie that came
No.
way earlier.
No, he went to prison anyway, so they had to kind of scrub
For
that.
tax evasion, right?
Yeah, they sent him in
He's
for
a
tax
hero.
evasion. And he's out now, and he looks the same age. Wesley Snipes has never aged a day in like 30 years.
wow,
Well,
good
you
for
know what they
him. I
say.
just thought he was eternally in prison for that. Like
Yeah,
once you're in,
right, you're out. He came out and he
Right.
was in that new Eddie Murphy movie, the Coming to America 2, the second one.
oh, good for him. Because like tax evaders are heroes, basically. So like,
Yeah,
you know, he basically didn't do anything wrong.
yeah.
Excellent.
That was the worst thing I saw today. Well, it's the worst or the best. It just depends really on your context. So if you really are racist and a Nazi, then it was the worst. But if you are a good person, then it was
Yeah.
the best thing to
Yeah.
ever see. I want to be in the meeting for these commercials they create where it's like because this whole thing was a setup. Did you see how they kind of piggybacked it off of the viral tweet from the preacher who was like, ladies, you shouldn't show yourselves in your bra and panties online. And then people start, tweeting pictures of themselves. I think that person is an employee of Adidas. I think this is all bullshit. Because they're
Or
like,
he's
Adidas
the smartest-
responds.
Or he's the smartest man alive who got every woman on
Absolutely.
Twitter to send him pictures of herself.
I know. What is that?
So I don't know. I saw that and I was like, that's brilliant. Like, bravo, sir. Like,
Is there going to be a woman who says, guys, don't show us your dicks on Twitter?
we don't
Someone
need that.
probably already has.
They just send them to us. So
Right.
it's
Yeah,
not
we
really
just go
like
to
a
your
thing.
inbox. You don't need to
Yeah.
send it don't need to be publicly.
There's a reason my DMs are closed. So
Yeah,
There's a
I get
reason
a
mine are
lot of
open.
dick pics
Yeah.
too, personally.
yeah.
Because I
Can't
like people.
Cam likes
Nothing to do
hand
with
pics, guys.
Yeah, I do. Some of those whip hand pics though.
Yeah.
I did go through all those titties though, cause like looking for a good pair too.
That was
Like
a great line.
I
You got to
like-
cut that for like a trailer right there. That was awesome.
I zoomed in and scrolled through and I'm like, there's gotta be a good pair in here. There was one good pair of titties in that.
I
whole
spent
picture.
hours and hours looking over those titties. And I was trying to find the same thing. Let me see the best pair. I'll have a rating system, have them all organized in rankings. And I was trying to find the trans titties. I couldn't
Oh.
find any trans titties.
Yeah. Well, how do you
Those
tell?
ironically, those would probably be
okay.
the best because they'd be big fake tits.
The nipple placement is sometimes off, and you can kind of tell it's It's all akimbo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your nipples seem a little off to me.
Yeah. Cattywampus. These titties are cattywampus. Yeah.
Brad, did you? I don't know. I hope you haven't seen the video, but did you hear about the woman comedian who was on stage and was talking about how she was vaxxed, boosted, had the flu shot, and then she goes on to say something about how Jesus likes her the best?
Oh my God.
Did you hear about this?
I saw a headline, but I didn't read the story.
So so I'm glad you get to see this for the first time. I
Yeah,
was really hoping you hadn't seen it. But just like, this was not her being funny or making a joke, but it's so perfect. So that's what
You're saying it would be a great joke had she planned?
Exactly. Just watch this.
Brag, I don't care, but I want you to know, double vaxxed, booster, flu shot, and I'm going to be honest, I have the shingle shot too. And I still get my period. What? Yes! Traveled, went to Mexico twice, did shows, meet and greets, never got COVID. Clearly, Jesus loves me the most. Seriously. So nice. So nice.
You telling me that wasn't on purpose?
No, she allegedly just fainted.
Oh my God.
She
That
cracked her
would
head
be
open.
the most perfect fucking joke ever. like I'm watching that at first. I'm like, this is terrible. It's like an open mic night. But then she does that. That's oh my God.
got
She needs to work
her-
that into. Is she okay?
No, she cracked her skull. And I mean, she's fine. She didn't die or anything, but she got a skull fracture. But the biggest laugh of that whole bit was when she hit her head, and it got a huge laugh. The room erupted. And
That's because they thought she was fucking ridiculous the way she was presenting it at first, like bragging about the fucking fact. That shit's not funny. What are you, Stephen Colbert? That people have been led to believe that stuff's funny. It's not. So when she fell down, they thought that was part of the routine. They thought it was the twist.
like,
I mean, I'm
you're
glad
actually
she's
funny.
okay. Yeah.
What it looked like was that she called out saying that Jesus loved her more than anyone else, and he went, "Bitch, no."
Yeah. Yeah. She was also, her body was a little tense the whole time. So the way she was moving around, it looked like she'd been holding her breath a lot, not breathing. So a lot of people get on stage and they forget to breathe. That's one thing. It's a weird thing, but it's like, remember to breathe. Remember to breathe. And you remember to breathe, you won't be as nervous, because when you're not breathing, you're focused on all the other shit. And it looked like she was not remembering to breathe. And she just was not, did not look stable leading up to that. I just think that she maybe might have been Jesus, might have been a combination.
A drop in the O2 count in her blood.
Yeah.
Also, so her and Chelsea Handler are together on a comedy tour right now called like Vaxxed and Horny.
This woman is?
Yes.
That shit she was doing was terrible.
Well, so was Chelsea Handler. But her and Chelsea are on this tour. Chelsea Handler is also in the hospital right now for undisclosed reasons. Which, to me is, you got your vax booster, you got myocarditis from it, and you're in the hospital and you can't say anything about it because you're going to look like an asshole. So, I don't know. It just seems a little funny to me that both the headliners of this comedy tour are in the hospital.
Yeah.
And their comedy tour is about how great it is that they're vaxxed. And also, I thought it was weird that she made that comment about still getting her period. Like, number one.
Yeah, sorry. Who's going to go see that fucking tour? I'm vaxxed. Nobody's going to see that shit.
I think Chelsea Handler was actually in that Adidas pic, though.
Probably. I'm sure she was.
She was everybody in that Adidas picture.
It was just 16 pictures of Chelsea Handler's boobs.
Chelsea Handler, she used to be funny until she got political. Now she's just like, her jokes, her punchlines are just like, hey, guess how many guys here have fucked me? Everyone. I mean, that's like her jokes. She just talks about, it's just, and then she starts bashing, Republicans, and she's one of their spokespeople. She's like a Kimmelite, I guess.
Yeah.
Who also used to be funny.
And it's unfortunate because there are like really funny women comedians. And when they are funny, they don't have I mean, okay. Let me get to my point first, though. Usually
Too much
they're
time to
small
think.
acts. No, I'm saying that like funny women, they don't really get like their due. And
Yeah.
you kind of put me on the spot. I'll think of 5 by the end of the show.
I know
Okay.
a lot of funny stand-ups. There
I
are.
know.
Yeah, there are a
I
lot
am
of funny like
against the
female stand-up.
The stereotype that
joke.
women aren't funny, I disagree with that stereotype. I know a lot of very, very funny women.
But a
joke,
lot of
guys.
times they don't have to talk about their vagina the whole time. Like the vagina
Well, wait a
bit
minute.
is
Now here's where we differ.
a-
No, you're right. You're completely right. I agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just think that like that's kind of like a woman said vagina is not a joke. It just makes people uncomfortable and people laugh when they're uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
so that kind of gets mistaken as like a comedy bit. And
Well,
that's
right.
kind of unfortunate.
And they also talk about like their vaginas and having penises in them and stuff like that. And I think that that's one of the dividing lines between like men being funny and women being perceived as not funny is everyone has lived with a man in some way. Everyone has heard him fart. Everyone has heard all the gross things. Most women have been with a man or will be. And so when they make those jokes, they're relatable to like everyone. But when you start talking about bleeding from your orifices, like half your audience isn't there.
Right.
Half
Right.
like when Amy Schumer joked about how it looks like she'd sneeze in her underwear.
She's
Oh,
I'm
God.
not there. I'm just like, oh,
Yeah, she's the worst.
leave some mystery. I mean, I know that this stuff happens, but like,
If she's doing that, so that's like the type of material that you do for a specific conference with a specific audience or something like that. So if you're hired
Yeah.
to work some sort of a women's conference for in medical or whatever, then you bring that material. But for the mainstream audience, yeah, you're right.
Maria Bamford, Ellen
She's funny.
DeGeneres in her heyday.
Ellen was great back in the day. Back in the 80s, you watch Ellen from the 80s, she was good. Now she's just a mouthpiece for the propaganda worldwide. But back in the 80s, she was. I used to teach a stand-up comedy class, and I used to show her clips from the 80s because she was her formula and just her structure was so good.
Yeah,
she was great at the reverse. Is what she was.
So
good
there's
at.
a show on
Ali
Netflix.
Wong. There's another one. I have three.
Oh,
now.
she's great.
I'm gonna beat the both of you. Joan Rivers.
Joan Rivers, yeah.
Eliza Schlesinger. I remember being funny.
There's
There's
a-
high five. So I mean,
I can't remember the woman's name. Lisa Lampanelli. I
Yes,
love her
Lisa
roast because
Lampanelli.
she's
Yeah,
the
she's
dirty.
really
Like
good.
she's funny, dirty.
Cloris
she's not-
Leachman also falls in that category too. Like she's really funny, but she's raunchy too. So
Yeah.
yeah. But there's a comedy like variety show on Netflix. I think it's called The Degenerates, and they'll have a bunch of like smaller acts on there. And a few of the women that I've seen on there have like blown me out of the water and were great. So naming names would be difficult for me. I'm not good with names, but I definitely recommend checking out The Degenerates because they do have some smaller acts on there that are really good.
And I can
let me
tell
say
you
the reason I say what's her name, Joan Rivers, is because of the balls on that woman, because she was making jokes about 9/11 like the next day.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people had the gumption or the balls to do that. And so
Yeah.
I list her not because I've listened to a lot of her, but because she had balls, and I respect that.
she was great at I think it was the Trump roast. Like Trump was also good, or maybe it was her roast, but they both were very funny at her roast. And Trump probably didn't write his shit, but she was very edgy, and she pushed the bounds. But Amy Schumer and them, they blow through the say the Overton window, they call it in news. They blow through that Overton window of comedy, but that's probably for kind of a purpose too, because they also represent the progressive agenda. So you're supposed to give them big snaps. You're supposed to love them.
She's the niece or
of Chuck Schumer, yeah.
Chuck Schumer,
Mhm, mhm.
the senator. I mean,
yeah.
When you look at some of the famous people, like a lot of the famous people, they actually have like connected parents.
Mhm.
And all of those like 1970s rocker, 60s rocker, what was that? Shit, I'm not going to remember it off the top of my head. There's a valley in California where a lot of these sort of like classic rock acts come out of. And they're all connected to like their parents are like CIA agents and shit like that.
Yeah, it's crazy when you look into
Jim
these
Morrison.
people. Yeah,
Jim Morrison is one of them. Yeah. Do you know what the valley I'm talking? There's like a
I'm not sure what the valley is.
There's like a region in California where Jim Morrison comes from. Let me find out about that.
A lot of it is almost like clockwork when there's somebody prominent who is new or even old, when you look into their background, they always have some sort of weird
Laurel Canyon.
connection.
Laurel
Was it
Canyon, thank you.
Oral Canyon?
Laurel.
Laurel Canyon. We'll get to
Yeah.
the oral later, Brad,
Yeah,
when we're
okay.
offline.
All right. Was it DiCaprio? Monica brought this up the other day. DiCaprio was one of the global young leaders from the World Economic Forum when he was a kid.
Ugh.
Oh.
And today he's in
Okay.
that climate change movie, Don't Look Up.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I hear it's just like not a good movie.
It's okay. I've watched. I haven't even watched the whole thing. It's like 2.5 hours long. I watched part of it. And it's not bad. It's kind of funny sometimes, but it's definitely a climate change agenda driven. And Jennifer
Mhm.
Lawrence, who is super fucking charming, but also she plays into all this now with her interviews and all her shit. It bums me out to see people that I'm like, they're really talented and great. And then now they're just mouthpieces for a fucking propaganda engine.
So I feel like you kind of have to be to work in that industry. Like it's expected of you. In the same way that during the McCarthy era, you kind of had to be part of this anti-communist thing. And if you weren't, they would like destroy your career. So, there are likely a lot of them who don't agree with it, but look what happens to the ones who are vocal about it. I mean,
Right.
even
So yeah, definitely.
Chris-
So we see like LeBron James and he
LeBron James.
totally down with the Chinese thing, and they get so much fucking money from over there, and people they act like that's not a thing. And now I'm not gonna say, so we have all this stuff that we hear about China, and China it's probably not fun to live there, but I'd be willing to bet that the Chinese people talk about us the same way we talk about them. So they probably hear a lot of propaganda about us, just like we hear about them. So for me, it's hard to decipher what's true and what's not about what we hear about China. See, I don't think it's about the people. I think it's about these ruling elites that try to use the people as pawns against us. But you got LeBron, you got the fucking whole Hollywood, just everything. They cater to China because that's where the big bucks are. They have so many people over there and they make so much money over there.
And that actually really speaks to something I've been thinking a lot about Russia lately too.
Real
Like
quick,
all
though.
of this. Yeah.
Before that, he said LeBron James. And I don't know if you've ever seen this Vine, but I think it's worth adding to the stream.
Okay.
If I can play. Oh, that's right. I have to push a play button.
LeBron James, LeBron James, LeBron James, LeBron James, LeBron James.
It's very cute.
What's that? Has like how many views I have? Like 1 million views. This kid just saying.
Well, and
LeBron
that's
James.
yeah, and that's not even the original because it was on Vine, and so that probably had 1 billion views or something like that because 7 seconds long.
This guy that was a student of mine, he started like a Vine channel. I never was into Vine. I don't know if I ever watched a video even on Vine. This guy started like a Vine channel, and he became like a super like well-followed Vine person, and he got all this. It was crazy. I didn't see him for a couple of years, and I saw him. His name is Aaron. I can't remember his last name.
Okay.
He's a funny guy.
Aaron Tuning?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah,
Oh.
I like him.
Yeah, he took my class a couple times. He's a funny dude. He makes like these corporate videos and stuff now, from what I understand. I saw a guy who works with him.
He's still on TikTok.
Oh, is he?
So he'll do things here and there on TikTok. But I was excited when I saw him there because I was like, I liked you on Vine.
Yeah, he's I never I knew him before he had this public personality. So I don't know much of him back then, but when I was at Relapse, he was in my class a couple times. He's a funny guy, and he started making videos for the Braves or something back then, and he's done really well for himself.
Nice.
That is someone I wouldn't mind talking to because he's just like he was one of those refreshing humors on Vine and on TikTok where it's not like cynical and kind of gross.
Is that what Vine was? People get like gross and shit?
Well, I mean, not necessarily, but like there was a lot of cynicism kind of in the background in a lot of those. But his just seemed like he was having so much fun. Doing what he was doing.
Oh yeah, he seemed, from what I remember of him, he was a pretty fun guy.
One more thing, and then we'll get back to Russia. But are you looking forward to the Batman movie at all?
Yeah, I like superhero movies. I like comic book movies. I wouldn't call myself a comic book nerd. I don't actually read the comic books, but I'm definitely interested in any new Batman movie. Something that has stuck out to me is I've seen stories where it's been like Batman's wearing eyeliner. Why is he wearing eyeliner? I don't know. Why is he fucking wearing eyeliner? And he's wearing eyeliner because he's goth, and if he's gonna wear the costume, he's gonna wear the costume. I don't know how I feel about the eyeliner. I know that the actor at one point during the break that they were like, "You need to fucking start working out," because he wasn't working out, and he came on the set, and they were like, "What are you doing? You got nothing. They're paying you to fucking work out, and he's not working out." He's a good actor. It'll probably be good. What do you think?
Well, I can't I've seen The Lighthouse. I've seen some other movies that he's been in. He's a good actor, but he's Twilight vampire boy in my mind.
Yeah, he's like,
And he's kind of slight in build. He just doesn't look like Batman. It's like when I saw the trailers, it was the first time I'd seen a Batman movie trailer where I was like, that looks like a dude cosplaying as Batman rather than actually being Batman.
yeah.
And so I looked at they brought up the my favorite Batman's Christian Bale, by the way. I know that that's like not something that people want you to say Michael Keaton, but I liked Christian Bale.
Yeah, everybody loves Michael Keaton, but I like Christian Bale too.
Yeah. But the duration of the movie is 2 hours and 55 minutes.
Really? Is it
new
the
Batman
long
movie.
Halloween? Is that what they're doing?
They're doing something with the Riddler, so I don't think they're doing the long Halloween. I know
right.
they're doing
they had
like
those
the
weird Riddler
detective thing.
pictures.
Yeah, but I'm like, I wasn't super interested into it because of Twinkle Batman. But then you say 3 hours, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's
I'm
a
not
long
doing
movie,
that.
and it seems like the movies these comic book movies, they try to make them super long because they want to cram all the extra material into it. That reminded me earlier. I wanted to ask you about this, Cam, because I know
What's up?
you are a comic book fan.
Yeah.
I have been comparing lately. So, Fisk, what's his first name from
Wilson?
the Daredevil?
Wilson Fisk.
Wilson Fisk, right?
Yeah.
So the Wilson Fisk of Georgia is Stacey Abrams.
That's
So you're
good.
telling me that she's not actually fat and that's all muscle.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And that
Terrifying.
behind that she puts on this public front, which kind of like Wilson Fisk, it says all these things that seem nice, but it says it in a weird, creepy way because she says some shit that's like supposed to be like great, like we're for equity and equality, but she's kind of weird the way she says it, and she, from what I know of her, she's a super effective, like. She's effective at getting done whatever her goal is to get done. And so I think behind the scenes, she fucking cracks some heads. She slams people's heads in doors. She murders people. And she ultimately wants to be the kingpin of Georgia, maybe the planet. I don't know. But she is the Wilson Fisk of Georgia right now.
Yeah, and brief aside, Wilson Fisk was done well in the Daredevil show.
Yes.
And when they brought him into Hawkeye for those couple of episodes, they finally gave him like the power, like the fighting power, the strength that he should have had the whole time. And I was just like,
awesome.
Hell yeah, finally.
Yeah, I love the scene where he's fighting the girl. He just knocks her across the fucking room.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, that series, see, I wasn't expecting much out of Hawkeye, but I actually enjoyed that series.
I think that was my favorite one.
It's my favorite
honestly.
Netflix series, or not Netflix, Disney Plus series. The other ones I haven't thought were good, which made me start to think is like they should. So the characters that people aren't familiar with, or they don't really have a huge base, like Hawkeye. People think Hawkeye from Avengers, like it's fucking Hawkeye. He's not as cool as the other ones. They should do the Netflix series, like fucking Disney Plus series first to build up a following of fan bases, and then do the movies for these people.
Yeah. And I think that they're doing that with a couple of different things, which is cool. But
so
yeah,
I just want to
wasn't super
remind
thrilled about all
everybody
these.
of the moment where Joe Biden called Stacey Abrams onto CNN because he said that he had a huge announcement to make. So she showed up extremely pleased, believing that he was about to make her his VP pick. And as he talks, basically telling the world how articulate and clean she is.
Yeah, she's very clean.
Her face changes. So picture one is her showing up ready to be made the first Black female VP, and then realizing that she's not, she's just clean and articulate.
So that
was the
image on the
moment.
right, the one where she is learning, So that's the Wilson Fisk learning that somebody says I can't work for you anymore. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And
she
cracks
walks
heads.
in, she's smiling, she's looking you in the eye, and then everything just turns.
Totally. You saw the picture of
Yeah.
her, right, with the kids that she just apologized
Yeah.
for, or maybe she apologized. I don't know. The
Did
headline
she
say
apologize?
The headline I saw right before we got on the show was like Stacey Abrams apologizes. You can't ever really know if somebody apologizes unless you go watch the apology or listen or read it yourself.
Right.
Because they were saying Joe Rogan apologized for having people with alternative opinions on the show. He didn't apologize for that. It was just bullshit. So Joe Rogan finally apologized. No, he fucking didn't. He apologized for the other shit, but he didn't apologize for that. So she probably did apologize. But that picture of her sitting surrounded by children, which I'm sure a couple of them were eaten after the photo was taken. That she has
How else
a big,
is she going to be
bright
strong?
smile, and they're trying to make it out like she's just like, oh, we just did. Does anybody on this planet believe that they were about to do that photo and she wasn't like, I'm not wearing this fucking mask? I mean, they don't fucking care. Like they don't fucking care. They aren't flipping about it. They know that other people are going to see it. They know that they're elitist and they don't fucking care. Their apologies are bullshit. She's bullshit. She's like 6'2". I would never say that to her face. She would fucking pummel me because she's fucking Wilson Fisk.
Actually that big?
She's 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah. And I think that like it's amazing. This picture is amazing because it really like she's happy as a clam surrounded by children that have to wear a mask around her.
Yep. It's like North Korea shit here.
Glorifies her. It makes her the most important person in a room. It exemplifies that she is above the rules.
Totally.
I mean, you want to talk about Wilson Fisk vibes. I am literally above all of the rules that your children have to follow.
Yeah, I completely agree. To see the smile on her face, but not to see their faces. It's the most elitist. Yeah, it's maybe they were, I don't know, maybe their teeth were all knocked out because they wouldn't comply with whatever she was saying. She fucking knocked their fucking teeth out, little shits. But it is. And she's very, in a lot of her press stuff, she's very egocentric. She's very, and I'm sure a lot of these politicians are, but it seems to stand out with her. And the fact that she's a fucking romance novelist with an alias is got to be. She has a literal fucking alias. Yeah, it's creepy.
Do tell, or I can Google.
Selena Montgomery is her romance novel name. Writer. And so she's written a whole bunch of romance novels, and she told Seth Meyers one time, who's the worst. It's hard to determine who the worst fucking late night show host is because they're all so fucking bad. I can't determine. There's like a race to the bottom with these late night hosts. But she told Seth Meyers that she writes romance novels. She writes characters that if she weren't a politician or doing whatever it is that she's doing, she writes the type of life that she would be living if she weren't doing this. And the novel they were talking about during this interview was a fucking spy novel that Selena Montgomery wrote. It's just like how I'm not saying she's a spy, but she's a fucking spy for somebody. I'm
not saying she's a spy, but she is a spy.
It's like, so Brad Raffensperger, if you're in Georgia, you're familiar with Brad Raffensperger. Actually, nationally, you might be familiar with Brad Raffensperger. He's a Secretary of State of Georgia, and he is the hero, the victim at the center of the Trump tried and forced Brad Raffensperger to, why don't you go find 11,000 votes, you fucking asshole? I'm going to have you fucking killed. That's the way the media presents it anyway. But it's really just, maybe we can find 11,000 votes, which is true because if you follow Garland Favorito of Voter GA, there's been lots of discrepancies that everybody has agreed on, even people who debunk. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Just made this while we were talking.
Did you just make that? That's fantastic. That's a Wilson Fisk. Yeah. You put her head on it.
Yeah, I couldn't find the photo I wanted. Well, I'll make it better, but I just wanted to share with you.
That's great. That's hers. Yeah, she fucking pummels people. She eats fucking live children. She's a very talented person, but she's also manipulative as fuck. So she like.
I made two.
She ran on a fucking platform of she's going to decriminalize poverty. In 2007, she was a lawyer for the city of Atlanta, and she wrote a law that was decried by civil rights advocates in Georgia and across the country as criminalizing poverty, a law that the FBI used 3 years later to ambush a bunch of homeless people. They dressed up as tourists, knowing that homeless people would come up and try and panhandle. This is based on a law Stacey Abrams wrote. And then they arrested all of these fucking homeless people, putting them in the system, finding them $1,000, which they can't afford, which gets them stuck in a cycle, which they never get out of. She is full of fucking shit, and they present her to be this fucking hero for minorities. It's such a crock of shit.
That's she should have stuck to these romance novels because her reviews on Amazon are actually really good.
I'm sure. Yeah. She's probably good at it. She's probably a good writer if she writes them. I mean, she's very talented.
Then she's also got a bunch of books that look like they're trying to be like Jack Ryan style, like
the spy movies. Yeah, that's what she was telling Beth Myers. Yeah, she writes stories about characters that she would be if she weren't doing what she's doing. That's what she said. Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Selena Montgomery. So so she's having sex with somebody. Who is it? Is what the big question is.
But who's like, I will give you a come up if you have sex with me? I mean, like, who's making that deal?
I don't know.
Maybe it's more like, if you don't have sex with me right now, since you're big and strong and I can't stop you, if you don't do it, then you can be president.
She's like, this doesn't have to be rape.
That's what she's threatening. Yeah, that's what she's threatening people with. She's like, I will have sex with you unless you do this. And they're like, okay,
I'll do it. It's done. It's done. It's done.
She threatened
done.
Brad, did I ever show you the picture that I made of her as a man?
No, does it look any different?
I'm gonna find it. I'll show you. But I love it so much because of the gap in the teeth. Like it's.
I would normally feel bad. Like, I like people. I don't like to be mean. I joke around, but I don't like to be like mean about people. But she is very deceptive and manipulative in her tactics and ways. And she presents herself to represent minority groups when she's not a representative of them. She is somebody who has been funded by the fucking Klaus Schwabs of the world for her entire life. And she's been put in a position because she looks a certain way. And people can identify with her so that she can manipulate those very people. So I'm okay talking shit about her.
If like she's a politician, which kind of like opens you up to like public ridicule, then you sort of have to like accept that. You can't go, oh, you can't make fun of me because I'm a part of a certain demographic. I'm female and I'm black. You can't make fun of me. It's like, no. I mean, if you want like equal treatment, this is the equal treatment that all politicians are on the chopping block and we're allowed to make fun of you.
Makes you think of that Lena Wynn tweet from the other day.
Oh,
or yesterday. Do you remember that one?
Liana Goebbels, as you called her.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I know someone who has that spelling, and it's Lena. So that's how I was pronouncing it.
Who, Lena Dunham? Is that who you're talking about?
Lena
Wynn.
Oh, that's right. My.
You mean that doctor, right?
Yeah, the Asian
Wynn.
doctor lady. Yeah, here I got it pulled up.
Okay.
Let's. No, don't need to share that. Here we go.
Yeah. Don't share your other screen. Where I know you've got your dirties on there.
All right. So she tweeted. What was this? Was this yesterday?
Yeah.
Yeah. She tweeted before there were two camps for and against pandemic restrictions. Now there's a third, pro restrictions earlier, but recognizing it's a different time now. This group wants to move on from vitriol and divisiveness to nuance and compromise.
Nuance. This woman wanted me put into a prison camp because I didn't want to get a vaccine. There's no
nuance. They don't fucking. So what do you guys think about this recent turn? I think there's a number of angles that they're going here. Personally, I think part of it is they want to take away these issues in the 2022 election cycle because Republicans could mobilize and organize around this mandate shit and how everybody's pissed off about it. And I think that they've looked at the tea leaves and they said this people are pissed off about this. So I think now they're trying to be like, we're going to scale it back. And they're even trying to, the CDC is saying it's too soon, but the Biden administration is still scaling back so they can make it look like, no, we're with the people. It's just, it's so fucking hypocritical.
Also, I've really been wondering about the people who bought into the COVID stuff, like the regular, normal, everyday people who really bought into it and thought, okay, if you don't wear a mask, if you don't get a vaccine, you're basically killing. My God.
Oh my God. Yes, she has white hair. This is the best. She's
That
like
weirdly
a baller, dude. She's a fucking gangster.
That weirdly reminds me of somebody that we know on Twitter.
Oh my God.
Like if you put him in dreadlocks instead, would that not look like Q?
Yeah, no, it does. But also, it looks like there's a football player he looks like that I cannot.
I
can't
the white
remember.
hair.
Wow.
It's so
Yeah.
great. Oh my God, this is the best. I'm so in love with this, dude. I wish whoever.
I don't
wish the
know why I put
Republicans
the
would use this. It
XXX
needs to be a
behind him.
billboard on Interstate 85. This needs to be a fucking billboard, and it just needs to be like, "Fuck you, motherfucker." And it's just to be all it says. She's outside of
like,
obviously a strip club or something.
She's a sassy gay man. Like
Why does she look better as a man? Is my question.
She looks good. I mean, I'm not gay, but man, as a man, I'm more attracted to Stacey Abrams than the female Stacey Abrams.
She looks like
Michael
Michael
Strahan. Oh my God,
who it
that's
was.
great. Yes. What if Stacey Abrams is Michael Strahan? Wow.
This whole time.
Whoa.
Wow.
We are blowing the lid off of this one, you guys.
We got to the bottom of that rabbit hole.
I don't remember what I was saying.
Lena Goebbels. I'd say little Miss Lena Goebbels would like you to stop being mean to her for scaring the public and advocating for you to lose your job and be locked in your house for 2 years.
That's right. I was saying about all the people who really bought into the COVID rhetoric. So they're just swimming along thinking that if you don't get a vaccine, you don't wear a mask, everyone will die. And now the government is turning around and being like, I don't have to wear a mask, all these things. So are they just sitting there going, okay, we're all going to die now? Like, are they not alienating? Terrified for their lives. Are they not in that effort alienating the people that they did get to go for this? Or are those people going, well, the government said it's over. Guess it's over.
I think that some people are doing that. I think that the people that are just purely political in nature are exposing themselves to be that way by just completely going along with all that. And I think that one of the reasons we see the CDC and others pushing back in the national media is to reflect the feelings of those people who feel what you just expressed. You're like, wait a minute, you just did that. So they have the CDC and others reflecting that so they can have that little dialectic argument, and then they can pull people to the middle and then just, kind of soften the blow instead of the coldly cutting off the mandates and all that shit. Was it that shit? I forgot. There was an example, another example of that, but I can't just slip my mind what it was. The way they pull people, they have these public figures represent the points of views, and then the faux battles in the media that will pull that sentiment one way or the other. And I think that's what's going on here.
I guess, and I would hope for those people that they do get pulled that way, because it is toward sanity. Yeah. So even if it is that they have to be marionetted over in that direction, that's what they need anyway, but at least they're coming to a more sane place instead of, if you go to a grocery store without a mask in the wrong area, they're going to attack you like a fucking gang, and
which is crazy.
When I'm by myself in one of those areas and I don't have my husband with me, I will wear a mask because I'm only 4.5 feet tall and I can't fight every Karen and Alpharetta. I can't do it. That's, intimidation and fear, and I shouldn't have to live that way.
Well, the way this is changing right now, a lot of people think that if you mention the narrative collapsing, that you believe, it's going to go away and everything's going to be fine and go back to normal. No. I'm not saying that, but I am saying the narrative is collapsing in a lot of ways. Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with people being fed up and done with it. Because they're like, why am I going to get this booster? I was talking to a person on the left the other day that I know I was like, oh, you got vaccinated. They were like, yeah. I was like, do you have your boosters or are you doing that? And they were like, oh, no, we're not doing that. And it's like, but you were the people who lined up.
Yep.
And so it's like, I think that the narrative is collapsing for different reasons. And I think that they're trying to control the spin. And I do think it's going to go back towards climate change.
Oh, it always goes back. All roads always lead back.
I'm surprised. One of my predictions early on, I think in February of 2020, was that once this stuff February or March, was that when this stuff starts to happen, you're going to start seeing a lot more like showing that things are doing better in the environment. You're going to see a lot of evidence of things being better because they started that at first. They're like, look at this waterway. It's normally dirty, but since people aren't working and doing this, look how clean it is, and the fish can come back.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's right.
And that happened at first, and then it stopped. And so I was a little surprised by that because I thought that would be like the prevailing narrative over the thing. I was like, look at how we've helped global warming or whatever. But it didn't happen. I was surprised by that because it started and then it stopped.
Yeah, they did that a little. They probably couldn't continue to prove it over time because they continued. See, they were doing a bunch of shit while we were all shut down. So they were out building a bunch of shit while everybody was shut down. And another thing about climate change is it's an unsolvable problem the way that they present the problem. So they present it in this way that you can't ever completely solve it, which they do that on purpose, because if you presented the public with solvable problems and then you did not actually solve them, then people would be like, what the fuck, you'd lose your power. So it has to be something that cannot ever actually be achieved so that they can continue to shift the goalpost and kind of rearrange it, but yet still use it to drive fear in people. And I think they're trying to make that climate change fear more remote. I think that's where we're headed, because people, it's hard to care about climate change unless you feel it personally. They want people to feel it personally.
Yes. There's a very specific example of this that I saw personally having to do with these certain kind of cranes in Florida. And it has been the claim since like 2013 that the numbers of these cranes are dropping. They're going to be extinct soon. They're going to be extinct. And you have a study coming out every single year since 2013, monitoring the numbers of these cranes. In 2018, they showed a significant jump in their population, and not one population count has been done since then. That, like, we don't want to show that their populations are growing because that doesn't coincide with our narrative.
Right.
Well,
and so
like the COVID was the newest myth, and I'm not using that word in the common vulgar way of, oh, this is a not true thing that people are pushing, but in like mythology. Yeah. Like COVID was the newest myth, and it was a strong myth that they could push because they could have, oh, well, these people are dying, here are these numbers, etc. But climate change is to the left what abortion is to the right. It's the boogeyman that they fight, but the moment they have the chance to change it or take care of it, they're not going to, because they lose their funding, they lose their fear-based votes, they lose all of that. And so I was thinking about this because, I mean, when was it? What year was it where like the Republicans controlled everything and Rand talked about it, and then they were like, hey, screw you.
When Trump got into office, Trump first got into office, and it was 2017, they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And Rand Paul said, hey, guys, are we going to do this abortion thing? And they said, hell nah. Yeah. They don't want to do it because that's their rallying flag.
So, a perfect example of that is Stacey Abrams when she was in college. So there was a bipartisan effort to get rid of the Confederate flag off of the Georgia flag. This was back in like 1992 or 93. And Stacey Abrams went to Spelman. And Stacey Abrams was an activist. You can go back and look at the newspapers. I exposed a lot of this on WSB, and we totally got shut down by the mainstream media. They said that it emerged, on somewhere on social media. We didn't even get credit for it, and they immediately spun it as soon as we released this. Like I found a video of her mom talking about her burning the flag on the Capitol, and I sat on it for 3 weeks because we didn't have a show because UGA football, which everybody loves. Right. I'm a Tech fan. That hurts a little bit. And Tech's terrible. So we had a show for 3 weeks, and I monitored the trends, and nobody was talking about this. The second we fucking played this clip, within the hour on the show, the New York Times, Stacey Abrams campaign, they're all saying, well, this footage emerged, this audio emerged from social media. And it fucking emerged from social media. And they spun it to make it look like she was a civil rights hero who got the Confederate flag removed from the Georgia flag, which she did not.
No.
Bipartisan effort. And there was a Democrat governor at the time, and there was a black police chief at the time who all wanted it removed, and they were making steps to remove it. And then her activist group, and Saul Alinsky talks about this. You find an issue, you make it your issue, and you fucking drive that issue, and that must be your issue. So this would have eliminated her issue. So what she did was she went to the steps of the Georgia Capitol, despite the fact that it was already happening, and she burned the Georgia flag. And the governor at the time begged her and her group to stop doing that. Please stop. You're going to sabotage the effort. You're going to draw out radical KKK members from the other side, and the whole thing's going to fucking get sabotaged. And it did.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, he blamed her fucking group, which advocated the use of violence. She was one of the people who led the marches during the Rodney King riots at her school. In the aftermath, she said it was peaceful, but none of it was peaceful if you go back to it. And the group that she started, you can fucking find it in the AJC. She started, they advocated the use of violence. She sabotaged the effort to remove that fucking symbol because that was an issue that she could gain political power off of. And she has continued to gain political power off of issues like that ever since. And that's what they do. They fucking make the issues worse and worse and worse. They never solve them because they need those fucking issues.
Well, and not to mention, if they were honest, if they actually cared about the environment and looked at things and said, okay, so what can we change? Do you know who the biggest polluter in the world is?
Stacey?
The U.S. military, I believe.
The U.S. military, the United States of America, the U.S. government. So if they were serious about this, they would be looking into these things and mentioning this, but they don't. They make it out to be the SUVs. They make it out to be your freaking air conditioner.
Yeah.
Their climate change legislation, if you actually look at the legislation, which they have to publish, specifically omits the U.S. military as far as any of these legal efforts will go.
Yeah.
And then the EPA itself is one of the larger polluters in the United States. Their cleanup efforts result in disasters far more often than you have like they make it out like unregulated companies are just dumping shit into the water.
All these mom and pop companies are ruining the environment.
Right. When it's the EPA, a lot of times in their so-called cleanup efforts that will, for example, in the Colorado River in 2015, they went into the King gold mine, I think it was called, in an attempt to clean up the waste there and ended up releasing millions of gallons of contaminated toxic wastewater into the Colorado River. To this day in 2022, that river is still polluted because of the EPA. And so,
right. And I mean, that just perfectly illustrates that it's not about actually fucking solving the problems. Right. It's about using the issue to organize people, to fundraise and to shape the world the way they want to shape it, using fear. So like, fuck, I just lost my train of thought. It was right on that. Somebody else pick up and it'll come back to me.
Speaking of wastewater, I will be right back.
Yes.
Gross.
There you go. Yeah, it is interesting, dude. So I think what I was thinking was, in this past couple of years, we've had, and this has been interesting to watch because I'm not quite sure where it's going, but there's been this revelation of the method. So people have become more and more aware of the manipulation tactics and of the ways that they use to try and fucking con people, like the false flag narrative going on with Russia right now. They're openly talking about Russia's going to do a false flag. They're going to have crisis actors. And you got this guy from the
see that clip?
Yeah, I did. And he did it twice. Monica said something too the other day. She's like, why is this happening again? And she's right. So it happens one time, but why would they let that person do that again? So we've been saying stuff like this for years, and we get our videos taken off. We get censored. This guy says it once. Okay, one time maybe somebody says it, but why would they allow him to come in there and do it again unless they want the public to see it? So they obviously want the public to see this. They want the public to be aware of this. The question is, why do they want the public to be aware of this? What are they trying to do? Are they trying to just reveal the method of all of this? Or are they trying to put it out there to see what they can put out there and then still what people will believe? Will people still continue to separate it? Can you say, hey, look, false flags, crisis actors are crazy conspiracy theory bullshit that only Alex Jones and racist Nazi motherfuckers who want to kill your children do, okay? And you should fucking run away and call the FBI tip line anytime you fucking think anybody's like that. And then the next day say, Russia is about to do a false flag crisis actor bullshit just like Alex Jones. Better believe us. And do it. Are they trying to see if they can fucking separate people's minds, split people's minds down the fucking middle? They could just be testing mind control tactics, because that's what this is. This is fucking mind control.
It makes me wonder if so do you remember, I don't remember what year it was, maybe 2014 2014-ish, 2016, I don't remember. But when Obama was in office and he wanted to go to Syria, he put down his red line of what Bashar al-Assad could do before he started a war in
Deterrence is what
Syria.
they call it. Yeah.
Right. And then the public, according to the narrative, essentially backed them down because they didn't want to go to war in Syria.
Right.
And it makes me wonder, are these little happenings where they look incompetent and they show it this way, like, oh, well, obviously we shouldn't do this because it's wrong. Is this because Joe Biden wants to look strong in mobilizing troops, but he wants the backlash so that he doesn't actually have to go to war with Russia and lose and look like an asshole?
That's a possibility. I think that part of this is America being just absorbed into the international NATO community. The America brand, the name America, fading away from that. And the more and more we defer to that, the more and more we say, there was a think tank panel discussion that we deconstructed where a CNN guy is hosting a think tank with a bunch of former CIA agents at the Council on Foreign Relations. It's very unbiased material you're looking at here with these fucking assholes. And the question that he asked was, with these domestic terrorists, and the whole thing was about fucking domestic terror, January 6th, all that bullshit. With these domestic terrorists and the threat of domestic terror being one of the main things, the top fears in 2022, is there a possibility that we're going to reach out to NATO and send in troops from NATO to help us wrangle these domestic terrorists who were at January 6th, who questioned the vaccine, who put their mask on their chin? Because that's the people they're talking about. And they make it very clear that that's who they're talking about. And they were literally asking, are we going to bring in global forces to fight domestic terror? And are we going to take away their rights the way we take away the rights of foreign terrorists? And to me, not only is that a signaling of they're trying to make Trumpism or QAnon the Nazi of our generation. Like, go fast forward 50 years, they had it their way. QAnon would be the same as Nazis, and anybody who didn't wear a mask right would be in that category. I don't think it's going to play out that way, but that's what they would want. And so I think that's America fading away, making it look like China is taking over. Whether or not, I think it's all a fucking game too. I think that the shit that we see and hear is total. I think we're about 3 or 4 layers from even getting close to what the actual truth is. But I think for the game they're playing, I think the image of America as a world leader is going to be taken away. And I think it's going to be given to China.
It very much was already the case when Putin is having a meeting with Russia, Russia is having a meeting with France and with Germany and not the United States.
Right.
Like, they're already having talks where our country is being excluded from that, because can you imagine bringing Joe Biden into that situation? What does he have to add?
I would love to see that conversation, like really see it, not in a controlled way, the way that they present it to us. You're exactly right. And it's like, it almost seems like they're making us look like fools. It's too obvious. They're making the whole false flag thing, that the fact that they say false flags are bogus bullshit, and then Russia's doing it. It seems just like it's too in our face to me. It seems like a trick.
Yeah.
And
Floyd Ray Roseberry. Do you remember that name?
Mm-mm.
Or have you forgot? He was the guy who was outside of Capitol Hill and he did the bomb threat in the van.
Oh, right. That's the guy
who
was driving and doing the live stream. And he was like, Joe, you can stop this. You can stop this. Call me, Joe. You stop. I'm on. It was a total redneck bumpkin. That was a total setup. I do remember that. And he parked in front of the Library of Congress, right?
Yeah. I do not believe that he was from the South or Southern, because he intermingled the accents of 4 different states in his supposed country bumpkin accent. Like, if you're from Tennessee, you sound a certain way. If you're from Georgia, you sound a certain way. Not a lot of people can pick up the differences between that kind of thing, but I can. It's like people who can read music. I can hear it.
Up. Hell yeah.
Right. I hear the difference between Texas and Georgia. I know that like the back of my hand. He intermingled 4 different states in his so-called accent that he was completely putting on as an act.
It was just bullshit.
Yeah.
And he looked like John Malkovich on a Zoom filter to me, is what he looked like.
They also gave 3 names rather than just 2.
2 names.
Yeah.
So like when you see that, you know that there's some fishy stuff going on. Like if you see 3 names, I mean, they don't call Ted Kaczynski by his whole name. They call him Ted Kaczynski.
Here's a 2-namer for you, Ray Epps. Ray Epps, who is present throughout all of the January 6th, instigating, telling people we need to break this window, we need to tear down this
Yeah.
fence, we need to
Well, they're
attack
hiding
this,
that,
we need to
though.
attack. Yeah.
When they
Except
front
for
load people, it's 3 names.
when he was exposed, and they're asking, we have members of Congress directly asking the State Department, directly asking these agencies, does this man work for you? The answer is not no. It's not a simple no, he doesn't. It's a I can't answer that question.
Right.
Excuse me?
Yeah. No, it's total bullshit. We have clips of people at the Council on Foreign Relations. It was either the Council on Foreign Relations or Brookings Institute talking about how there were black ops CIA agent, black ops propaganda agents. It's a terminology they use that had infiltrated the QAnon groups on January 6th for the purpose of causing division and stirring shit. Like they say that openly in one of their panel
QAnon
discussions.
was always a freaking spook.
Yeah, totally.
Always. The whole
Like,
time.
The first time I heard about it, I was like, this is a spook. This isn't real. I mean, this is the classic way of convincing some people that something's happening, gamifying it so that it's like playing a game, and you're finding
that's a great way
clues.
to put it.
You're wasting your time. You're saying things that are insane. Like what's his name?
Guy who
Tom
shot up the
Hanks.
pizza parlor? Oh, Tom Hanks. What a fucking
Tom Hanks.
chode.
Oh,
He's apparently already dead, along with a bunch of other people, and they're just
right.
like
Leonardo DiCaprio was arrested or something
Right.
like
They're
that.
all going to be
yeah.
executed, and
everyone's going to be executed and put on trial, and it's as spooky to me as the sudden uprise of flat Earth people.
Yeah,
because I think that I genuinely believe that the flat Earth theory coming back was purely a way to demonize people who question the narrative, because they're like, oh, you're like those flat earthers.
Yeah.
So with QAnon, what I found interesting is, so QAnon people, they gamified it. You're absolutely right. They made a hunt for clues, and then there was a lot of truth in the theories that were presented, but those theories were put in there
Like
so
the
that they could
pedophilia.
they could discredit it. So anytime somebody brought up a legitimate theory, they'd say, "Oh, this is some QAnon bullshit," and they could all, clump it all together and dismiss it. Well, I just thought it was hilarious. And I think their bullshit is hilarious. The way that it's terrible, but it's like, guys, this is so fucking obvious. So the Sedition Hunters, you're familiar with the Sedition Hunters, right?
Yeah, that's like an online group, right? Like
this
the
is
people...
a very noble online group who searched for clues on people's Facebook pages and went on a witch hunt to try and find people who were at January 6th. And then they would call the FBI and they would tip them off to people, and people ultimately got arrested. So these people were doing the exact same gamified shit that QAnon was doing. They were searching online for fucking clues to try and fucking out people who were associated with something they said was bad, yet they were fucking glorified by the fucking FBI and the media, and the FBI asked for their fucking help.
I just had a realization as you were talking about that. You can tell me if it's stupid, but do you remember last year, I think sometime before or maybe it was the year before, I can't remember exactly what the timeline was, but there was a Netflix series that came out. I think it's predictive programming, but it's the Netflix series Don't Fuck with Cats.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because which is like
RBI.
the story of Luca Magnotta is disgusting and horrifying.
What is that whole story? I haven't actually seen that series.
Okay,
Basically,
so
go ahead.
Luca Magnotta was like this weird gay bisexual poly model, and he wanted to make it big, and he kept trying to make it big. He didn't make it big, and so what he started doing was these horrible, evil things that serial killers do. He got kittens, and he got one of those.
Not too much detail. We don't need too much detail.
He
did horrible things to
He
cats.
killed the kittens in videos, and he also did it a different way as well. And then he finally graduated to killing a man, dismembering him, eating him, and stuff on video as well. But
because
before that even
used
happened,
every part of the buffalo.
There are people online in a Facebook group who decided they wanted to find out who it is. There's also several Facebook groups that are true crime people who web detectives or something, but they made this show of these people who were so offended by the cat video that they were the ones who essentially figured out who Luca Magnotta was and turned him into the police.
Crowdsourcing.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so you have
Reddit
that.
Bureau of Investigation, which the FBI actually physically turns to for cold cases. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I'm just saying, I think that was predictive programming. I think that was to lead to the insurrection hunters. That was to lead to what happened with Brian Laundrie and
I
Gabby
used to
Petito.
fucking that Brian Laundrie shit. Yeah, on our show, I'd be like, this is fucking showing the fucking crowdsourced model of investigation. It's showing it's a test of its effectiveness.
But I think that Netflix documentary was specifically placed when it was where it was so that people would watch it and be inspired to do the same thing for insurrectionists.
Soviet era, we're all gonna tell on each other. We're all gonna right.
Absolutely.
I got you.
So it's like there have been different times within history, and I can't give you many. Maybe Brad can, but there are these ideas that come up in movies or TV that then it happens in real life. Like one of the examples that I don't know if it's actually particularly true, but if you look at I think it's Neo's passport or ID on in the Matrix, his expiration date is 9/11/2001. And so
wow.
And so between that, I mean, that one, I think that might just be, that's just a thing. But there have been different times in movies where things have been shown or explained or, fleshed out in some way.
X-Files spinoff series where they had the pilot episode, which might have been the only episode they did, The Lone Gunman, where they averted a disaster. They stopped a plane from crashing into the World Trade Center. Narrowly, they stopped it. And they absolutely do that stuff. We did a covered story just last week where the World Economic Forum, they had published an article where they were talking about how I can't remember what the phrase was. They always have these stupid phrases they come up with, which is just a description of something they've been doing for a long, long time. But the whole article was about how they need to make these people who are cultural creators, who are basically film directors, actors, whatever. They need to be a staple at these meetings with world leaders, with business leaders and international leaders around the world. They don't just need to be coming into the World Economic Forum or Davos or Bilderberg, whatever, just to be entertainment. They need to be here to help create the world policy because they have the influence over what people think, believe, the reality that they perceive because of the art that they create. And they were very, very just overt about, we need these people here to help us do this because they have the influence over the population. And that's been the case for a long time. You read Edward Bernays' old shit, and he was like, you need to be a fucking whisperer into the ear of the fucking director of major films. I mean, that's basically what he said.
Here's another example, and I think it's somewhat predictive programming, but I think it came a little bit later. But it's also just a way to train the populace. The TV show 24.
Oh yeah,
it's about counterterror. It's about all of these different things. The first episode aired November 6th, 2001, which meant that it was in production and pre-production and being planned far before that, right?
Yeah.
And so then you have George W. Bush doing his thing and the enhanced interrogation techniques. And then you have Jack Bauer on TV every week torturing people and terrorists. And it's like this, and it's like, as a kid, I loved that show. It was so great. And I'm sure it's fun to watch now. But like, they were teaching me to not care about enhanced interrogation techniques, aka torture.
To love them, actually.
To cheer it.
Yeah.
Or even further beyond that anybody in law enforcement who breaks the law in pursuit of these criminals. So the criminals' rights don't matter. The due process of law doesn't matter. And the police and the interrogators who subvert them are actually heroes for doing that because the law is just tying them down. And that's the formula for almost any cop show that you'll see, where the hero of the show is somebody who will is a loose cannon who kind of breaks the rules in order to catch the perp.
Shit. Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So what they don't show, they always show some very guilty person that you have no hard time hating. You're like, yeah, get that guy. He's a kitten murderer.
Doesn't matter. Do what you need to do to get that guy.
Right.
And pretty soon that guy is going to be somebody who questions the election or who wears the mask on their chin. But what you said, so the show Utopia, which was on Amazon Prime, it wrapped production the day before event two, the fucking event, the pandemic event. Yeah.
Wow.
The day fucking before it wrapped production for Event 201.
Well, and it's like these people
it's
are
like, that's a fucking coincidence like hell, but maybe.
well, and it's like with 24 in particular. What's interesting about it is they also couched their morality in it, so they had an excuse as to not be like, oh hey, we're just promoting torture. Like everyone was there for the torture. Everyone cheered when Jack Bauer said he needed a towel because he was going to shove it down a guy's throat and pull out his stomach lining.
People, yeah,
right? People loved it,
Awful.
but you have these really, but at the same time, these are good writers because like there's a quote from the first season of 24, I think the first episode. And it's like the show is good because it's this arc of him realizing this is bad, essentially. But there's a quote, and I think about it every now and then. But it's you can look the other way once, and it's no big deal, except it makes it easier for you to compromise the next time. And pretty soon, that's all you're doing, compromising, because that's the way you think things are done. You know those guys I busted? You think they were the bad guys? Because they weren't. They weren't bad guys. They were just like you and me, except they compromised once. Yeah. And so it's like, that's great. That's brilliant writing. It's really good. It's a really good concept across the human experience, not just in this. But then
that writer gets it. So it's like that writer gets it. But yeah, no, I know what you mean.
But we're still, when he says, give me a hacksaw, we're like, hell yeah, he's going to cut someone's thing off.
Drops a bag with somebody's head in it in the middle of CTU. Chloe does stand-up comedy around Atlanta sometimes.
Yeah. What's her name? Mary Ann Rice Cub?
Yeah, something like that. She actually started as an improv actor, and she's
funny. She's one of my favorite roles.
Her husband's a libertarian, according to her.
Huh. One of my favorite roles from her.
That word can mean so many things.
I know.
These days.
You're right. It's changed the meaning of it.
It's very nondescript. But what was that I called it like a year or two ago? I said it was a label without distinction, something like that. Like it means nothing.
It's been co-opted. I think it's been too like it's used to be. The media can demonize it as radicals, and then there's people who it's to the point where I've never been one. I don't like to associate with labels because as soon as you say I'm a label, then people they react to the stereotype. They don't react to you. And I think they've kind of co-opted the libertarian label to try to make it something that's not.
And unloaded terms are so great because if you use a label, you have your own that you've worked on or one that's not used as much. You get to imbue that with information.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You get to set the ground rules for what that means, rather than someone coming in with preconceived notions.
Create that own brand.
Yeah, dude.
So Homeland, you've seen Homeland, right? On HBO.
I think I watched like a season of that.
Okay, well, that show, the only reason I started watching it is this is right before we got kicked off WSB. I found an interview with Claire Danes, and she was talking about how after like season 2 or 3, the writers stopped like coming up with anything because every season what they would do is they would go out to Langley. They would go out to CIA headquarters because the show was so popular. And the CIA would bring the writers, producers, and some of the actors into a room, and they would tell them what the next season was going to be about. I mean, she says this in a fucking interview.
Right. Yeah.
They would have a writer's workshop where the writers would just do nothing and they would fucking fill in the blanks. Here's what you're going to write about. Here's what the show is going to be about. And that show was like, people praised it for being predictive, for knowing what was going to happen with international policy and stuff. I'm like, that's because the fucking CIA was writing it.
A lot of times you'll hear on mainstream media, you'll hear someone say, well, our source in the State Department. You don't have a source in the State Department. The State Department has a media source, and it's you.
Yes, right.
Sorry, Cam. Source. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I've heard a lot of that a lot of people stopped trusting or liking John Krasinski from The Office because he was on Jack Reacher, who was an CIA agent, and every time there's something with the CIA in media, the CIA is on set.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
I was we were talking about this at dinner, me and my husband tonight, actually, where he's giving a like a red carpet interview, and he says something to the effect of, we should all be on our knees thanking the CIA every single day. I was like, wow, my Jim Halpert boner is gone forever. Like,
he's so good
on my knees. I don't think so.
Like
Right.
Yeah,
I
he's
Say
I
Jack
hate
Ryan, by
that.
the way. The
Jack
office guy was
Ryan,
Jack
yeah.
Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate that. I hate that about him. But if he plays Reed Richards in the Fantastic Four in the MCU, I'm there for that. Like I'm on board.
Yeah, it sucks when there's an actor that is a good actor and you like them, and then you find out that they're in. So Tom Cruise is a really good actor, but he's just such a crazy motherfucking piece of shit. There's like
Alec
God.
Baldwin
it's one of-
shoots people
Alec
on set.
So yeah, Alec Baldwin kills people on set, then he gets a contract to narrate a crime drama on
You know what?
fucking iHeartRadio.
30 Rock is still good. I will still watch 30 Rock.
No,
It's still
so
good. Like,
that fu-
I don't give a
that
shit.
show where he does what's that show where he's a salesman? He's like he's a balls, and he just fucking he does a salesman pitch.
Glenn Ross. or
Yes,
something like that?
it's like the
Okay.
best monologue ever, but he's just he's like a piece of trash,
So it's one of those things where it's like you got to separate the art from the artist.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes it's harder than others.
I know it's harder than others. It's a lot easier when they're dead. For example, Jackson Pollock killed 2 teenage girls in a car that he drove drunk off of the side of a cliff, and
I thought
he's
that was
my
a
favorite.
Kennedy.
No. Well, I mean, it probably was
yes,
too.
also
But
Kennedy, definitely.
I love Jackson Pollock's work. I love his paintings. I would own one if I could, and I do not give a shit. David Bowie slept with a 14-year-old girl. He's dead.
So did one
I
of the
don't give a
members
shit.
of Zeppelin.
Right. Like I don't know if that guy's dead or
Mhm.
not, but he will be soon. And the art and the artist are not the same thing. Once the art leaves the artist, it belongs to who is consuming it. So if I am looking at a painting, there is a private conversation going on between me and that artwork, and the artist is out of it at that point. So I definitely believe in the separation. And just to add to this point, because it's kind of important to me, when you have something like a movie or a TV show, and one actor in that movie or TV show fucks up, there's also staff members, camera people, hundreds, maybe even thousands of people who put their blood, salt, and tears into making this program. So it's not just the creation of that one actor. And you shouldn't throw a movie that's awesome out just because one of the actors in it is a fuck up. That's all
And I
have to
agree.
say.
It takes a lot to make. So for every bad movie or show you see, the effort that went into making that, it's just extraordinary. It's
Well, it's
so
like-
much effort.
It's like R. Kelly is clearly a terrible person.
Trapped in the
Yeah.
Closet's the best weird document miniseries I've ever seen in my life, and I'm a little disappointed. I think that part of his sentence should be he has to finish fucking Trapped in the Closet.
Yeah. But all I'm saying is when I Believe I Can Fly plays on Space Jam, I'm singing along. Like that's
Right.
going to
That's it.
happen.
Yeah.
And I think the hardest person for me okay,
Excuse me,
second
sorry.
hardest. The hardest person for me to separate
Talking about hard, dude. You
is-
just gotta get
is Tom Hanks.
Oh
I
my
can't-
god,
I
Tom
think
Hanks
he's a
is such a spokesperson for.
I think he's a terrible person, and I can't. But the second hardest person is what's the guy who played the Hulk? Mark Ruffalo.
Mark Ruffalo.
He's a
Yeah.
terrible.
He's
person.
terrible.
He's a terrible human
But
being.
love the Hulk, Yeah. Yeah. I
right.
gotcha.
But he's the hardest because it's
Like
like
Captain America. That guy's insufferable on social media. He's fucking insufferable. I have a theory that he's going to come out as gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I have that theory.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
But he's just like, I love Captain America. But when I hear him tweet, I'm like, God, stop it. Stop doing
well,
that.
and it's like, yeah, I agree. But it's like I'm reading a Captain America, Ed Brubaker's run on Captain America and the Winter Soldier right now. And it's like, I think he's a shitty person. And I like, shut up, you scripted actor
Right.
about this stupid political stuff.
Yeah,
But it's like, I'm reading that book and I'm like, why doesn't this look just a little bit more like Chris Evans?
Right.
And,
So,
you
yeah.
know,
So I think they go to them, though. So in their defense, a little bit,
The
they-
actor is an avatar that the
Right.
writer's work is being acted out through. So
Mhm.
it's like they're only a small fraction, maybe a third of this entire thing.
yeah.
Is they are the dolly through which this
Right.
magic is being.
That's not them.
sent
That's
to
not
you.
the
Yeah.
actor. That's the character. Totally.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that because they have that influence, they're going to be surrounded by people who try and influence them and propagandize them to try because
Right.
they know that they have wide influence, like the World Economic Forum thing. They want to use these people as influencers. And so they don't have time to I mean, acting takes a lot. It's a fucking lot of work to do a role. If you have a main role in something, you are going to be committed, and you're not going to be reading the news every day. You're not going to be doing deep dive research. So when you hear things from people around you or people that you trust, you're going to believe them. So in his defense, he's probably surrounded by people who feed him with bullshit all the time.
Well, yeah, and I tweeted the other day that it's better to just assume that your favorite actor in Hollywood is a pedophilic monster rather than a hero, because at the end of the day, they're going to do something that's terrible that you hate them for. And why not just assume that they're doing terrible things and just enjoy the art?
Yeah, that's a good point, because if everybody took that position, then that would take away the power that they have to influence people, because you'd just be looking at them for the art that they do instead of their influential power, kind of away from that. And then the people who are propagandizing through them would no longer go to them, because that's told. They see these people as mouthpieces, and they seek to fucking put the globalist message into their head. That something you said made me think. So I was playing this. So I haven't played video games in like 25 years. I recently got a PlayStation 5. I had an opportunity to get one, and my thinking
How the
was,
hell
I'll
did
get
you
it.
get one?
I had an opportunity to get one. I clicked on the fucking thing thinking I wouldn't get it, because I know this guy who works at Target, and he told me when to do it. And I ended up I was like, okay. And my thought was, if I don't like it, I'll just sell it for like fucking $2,000.
Or just send it to me for free.
Or send it to you. And so my friends have been trying to get me to get one for years, because back in the day, when we were roommates, like 10 years ago, they would play, and I'd just get on the headset and talk shit, man. I just fucking talk shit to everybody. So it was fun. And so they wanted me to play so we could do that again. So I got one. I was like, okay, I'll play a little bit. And what the fuck was that? What am I even talking about PlayStation for? What were
predictive programming? Maybe I don't know.
Predictive programming. We're talking about celebrities. We were talking about Tom Cruise. What the fuck? I had a point. Oh, so I'm talking to my friend. We're playing through this PlayStation thing the other day, and we were playing Grand Theft Auto, which is a hilarious game. If you have Grand Theft Auto, here's what I suggest. I suggest that there's one of the characters, if you're in that regular mode, I don't think this is the online mode, but you can make them go in slow motion. Go in slow motion, then just drive up the sidewalk. It's the funniest thing you'll ever see in your life. It's hilarious. But my friend, he started singing, and this buddy of mine, he is a huge liberal. He's like hates Joe Rogan now. He just buys into all the bullshit. And so he starts singing a David Allan Coe song during the game we were playing. I'm like, are you singing David Allan Coe right now? David Allan Coe, if you're not familiar, has some very good country songs. You Don't Have to Call Me Darling. You Never Even Called Me By My Name. But he's also got some very racist songs. And this guy's singing a racist. I'm like, you are the most fucking progressive mouthpiece motherfucker I've ever heard. And you're singing a fucking David Allan Coe song that's laced with the N-word right now through a streaming platform. This is the most hypocrite. What the fuck is wrong with you? Was my question for him. And he's just like, no. And he said this. He said, it doesn't matter because I'm kidding. But other people aren't fucking kidding. It was maddening to me.
I would have killed to be a fly on the wall when you asked him that, just to hear what his response, or at least look at his facial expression when he tried to reconcile with himself that it was okay for him. There's context. Everybody would understand it, but it's not okay for other people. I have this Joe Rogan thing. I've wondered if this is the high point, the watermark, because I don't know that they're really going to be able to cancel him. Even if he did say the N-word, it's not like all of his fandom is just going to drop off from listening to him. Most people who are listening to Joe Rogan don't really care about that.
They don't care. Like, people on the left like Joe Rogan. And
he's not an extreme person on the right. Somebody had tweeted a list that was like, here are the left-wing people Joe Rogan has on, and here are all the right-wing people Joe Rogan has on. And this was supposed to be proof that he's a right-wing extremist. Yeah. Well, the problem with that list is that almost everybody that they put on the right-wing side were people who were centrists. Russell Brand
listed as
a Republican. It's just like, what?
And it really, it was like, dude, you are not making the point that you think you're making. Yeah. You're actually making the opposite point, which is that anybody who doesn't completely fly to the left wing is a right wing extremist to y'all.
But that's what
And
they
then-
want it to be. They want to project that
Yeah.
reality as people like
Right.
Russell Brand, who is not even close to a fucking right winger,
No.
as being a right winger. They want to make people think that that is what the majority of people feel, when it's not. That's just what the media tries to present. That's not what people feel.
So, like,
I
is this
think-
the high water mark? Is this where we're saying, okay, you know what? No more. We're done. If he said the N word 10 years ago, no one gives a shit.
And
Like,
they
even
really don't.
they put out an article about him saying he made fun of a disabled child 20 years ago. I was like,
They have this
yeah, I don't
fucking-
care.
But so
Doesn't
they
affect me.
collect all these clips and whatever of people for this purpose, and this company that put it together, you can't find out like who the name is behind it. You can find out who they're connected to, but you don't see exactly who it is that put it together. But it's funded by
Right.
these liberal or organizations, and they want to try and smear people, but I don't think it's working. So this think tank that we're going to be deconstructing tomorrow on
Midas
Rockfin,
Touch?
they do what?
You're talking about Midas Touch?
Yes, that's who they're connected to. The group is that
Yeah.
made this video. Yeah. So this think tank is talking about this. They bring up Joe Rogan. They bring up how Spotify is horrible for not getting rid of him and all this. And these are fucking people who everything they talk about everything in war metaphors. Everything's a fucking war metaphor to these people, and they're all connected to the World Economic Forum, the Council on Foreign Relations, and in this think tank, and this think tank has very few views. It doesn't have many views on the video. So if you see this on a mainstream thing, you might think, what's the problem? Why are they telling us this? But this is something that hasn't been seen by many people. And they're talking about how they're losing. They're
Yeah.
talking about how the fucking other side, the people they're trying to fight against, the disinformation, the Joe Rogans are winning, and that they need to figure out what to do.
When that video came out and they were accusing him of being the king of disinformation, the guest he had on that day was a soil expert.
God.
This is the dangerous information that Joe Rogan is putting out into the world. Sorry,
I don't
Cam,
know how
interrupted you.
anybody can, if anybody's seen the Sanjay Gupta interview,
Mhm.
that is a liberal, and then watch Sanjay Gupta go on Don Lemon's show, who is currently about to be in court for sexual harassment charges,
For
can then
groceries.
continue to think that like Joe Rogan is horrible and that Sanjay Gupta and CNN and whoever are correct on this. It's like a test in emotionally driven political tribalism, because when it comes to the evidence and the facts and information, it's beyond. It's gone. I mean, it's so exceedingly clear that the leftist, the progressive bullshit is total bullshit. Joe Rogan's not a racist, that the mass shit, it's okay to question it. But they've gotten people to look at the face of all this evidence, of all this rational questions and stuff like that, and still say so-and-so's a racist, so-and-so's a Nazi. What they're able to identify by doing that is, even though it's a small group of the population, they're able to identify the radicals that they can fucking get to do shit with.
And they shot themselves in the foot immediately with that, because as soon as that Joe Rogan video hit, an Anna Kasparian video with the exact same format of
Shane.
her saying, and saying the N-word over and over and over again came out. And
Oh,
immediately the left
Yeah.
went, but the context is like,
Man,
oh, so
that's so
context
great.
does matter.
I didn't
then
see
also,
that.
Yeah, look up the Anna Kasparian N-word video. It's brilliant. It's the exact same format as the Joe Rogan one. And they've got Joe Biden dead to rights saying the N-word twice in a congressional hearing. Oh, but the context. Oh, I thought there never was context. And that's the entire thing you're pitting on Joe Rogan, that
Yeah.
there's never any context. Well,
So,
Yeah.
do you know who Dave Portnoy is?
Yeah,
Barstool
the
Sports.
Barstool Sports
Yes.
guy.
So,
He's funny.
the guy, I don't know if it's Midas Touch or Midas Touch, but there are these three brothers, and they're funded. It's a super PAC, a Democrat super PAC, and what they do is they try to cancel people, and they're at the head of trying to cancel Joe Rogan.
Mhm.
And so they've also done this to Dave Portnoy in the past, and so he had all three of these brothers on his show, and they're trying to make their case or whatever. And he goes and he says, and you should look it up. Midas or Midas is spelled Meidas. Touch is spelled the normal way. But he has them on the show, and he goes, okay, so I have definitive proof that one of you used the N-word in a private conversation one time over text message. I have that right now. And so they were like, well, that's a lie. He goes, why would I lie about that? And he was like, I think you're capable of lying about that right now. And he's like, it's one of you is one of your fiancés named, and insert woman's name here, and the guy in the top, I think he's top left corner, like you can tell he's like,
He's nervous as fuck, wasn't he?
shit.
That's great.
Because at some point he texted the N-word to someone and he got caught.
He did. Of course he did.
It's beautiful. And so I think Caleb Hull tweeted out the video at Caleb J. Hull, but it's man, Portnoy just, I mean, he's probably not a nice guy, but holy crap, every time I see him in a TikTok, I'm like, I like this guy.
You know, and whoever it was that texted the N-word, not knowing anything else about them, that doesn't mean that they're racist, that they text.
Right.
Nope.
But that's what they want. So they want to use this as some racial, meter that you can determine that people are racist for. But it's total fucking bullshit.
I find it very, very interesting that I have heard the N-word more times in the last week said on every corner of the globe. All of everywhere. I mean, like, I'm hearing the N-word all of the time now, more than I've heard it ever, like the past 5 years combined.
You see Brian Stelter play the clip going, just shameful. I know he's a fucking propagandist, but he's so full, like he's so full of fucking shit. These people, I'm starting to get convinced that the only reason people like Brian Stelter and these other fucks are there, like what's his name, Acosta, are to get people like us to hate watch him, because I don't know. There's a very small sect of the public who's like, yeah, Acosta, Brian Stelter. Who the fuck is a Brian Stelter fan? I mean, the guy's
not his wife.
Not at all. No.
And that's when the tears came.
Yes.
But that's like the best part of that video, though, if you watch it, is as he's bringing this up, they're going, there's no context. There's no context. Anyone should ever say this.
Exactly.
And then, oh, it's beautiful. Oh, it's just, like, watch that video.
I'm going to watch it. And Rogan's a good target too, because so comedians, what their job to do is to push the boundaries of what is acceptable. So you go back in time, and Saul Alinsky actually talks about taking shit out of context and stuff like that. When you read this, you can fucking frame anybody for anything. You take shit out of context. But comedians, they stretch the bounds of what's acceptable in culture at that time. And we know nothing about nobody gives a wider cultural perspective or whatever of anything really in these days. They just look for things that are out of context. But I knew comedians back in the day who, in fact, almost every comedian that I've known at some point, not everyone, but a lot of them have at one point, I've seen them say the N-word on stage. There was this one group who right now, in fact, I know that they're very, very liberal. They're very, very pro-vaccine, and they may or may not even receive some sort of funding for shit because of their pro-vaccine stance and what they're willing to do for it to spread propaganda. I've seen them in improv warm-ups, and on stage when they were newer performers. I've seen them say the N-word relentlessly because it was shot comedy with black people on stage. The only people not saying it on stage were the N-word. I remember watching it going, okay, it's a little far. It's not, because they were just, it was new improvisers say the fucking raunchiest fucking shit you've ever seen in your life. And the whole idea of improv is no judgment, because you have to fucking go crazy to learn how to get good at improv, to learn to find that boundary. And in warm-ups, especially when you do warm-ups, it's just no judgment. You got to let your mind go free. You do word associations. You hear the dirtiest, raunchiest, fucking horrible shit in warm-ups. And so these people who I've heard say the most horrible shit ever, I mean, that would just totally get them canceled, ruin their lives if it were ever public, are the biggest advocates for canceling fucking Joe Rogan and others.
That's right.
Like it's just fucking crazy.
And sorry, Cam, were you about to say something? I've interrupted you like 6 times in a row, so I'm trying not to do it again. I have a friend who comes from Romania, and she was there during the Ceausescu era, communism. Like, she straight up lived that life. She's here in the United States, and we were talking about comedy, and the comedy that she sees on television, she does not understand. And one of the things she said is like, it's so like off the wall, things that people would never do or say in public. I was like, that's why we find it funny, because it is something we could never say and we could never do. You might think you want to say something like that in public, but you know that you shouldn't. And that's why we're laughing at it. And so that's, unique to our culture as far as our comedy goes. So now we've hit up against this brick wall where what makes us laugh uniquely as Americans is being like forbidden from us. We can't push a boundary anymore. these are the lines and you're not allowed to cross them. Well, what's funny is crossing them. That's
Right.
why the N-word is funny. It's not funny because you're making fun of Black people. It's funny because you're not supposed to say
It's
it.
forbidden.
It's forbidden. That's
And
exactly
it's not
when-
always funny. It's like there are
It's
people
not
on
always
Twitter,
funny.
Fucking cringe most of the time.
Yeah,
Most
they're
of the
people
time, yeah.
on Twitter and on other podcasts who expect me to laugh anytime they say it. And I'm just like,
Right.
you're just a little sad, bald white dude.
It's just
Why
attempted
would I
shot,
laugh if
you
you
know?
said this?
Right. And if it's said in a way where it's fucking, so Joe Rogan was repeating an album for the Richard Pryor. He was, according to him, he was just he was saying things that other people said, which is the same thing that happened to the Papa John's guy. He was repeating what others had said. The Papa John's guy was
Right.
set up by a company that had been bought out by Hillary
That was
Clinton
so
donors
bad.
from Hollywood without him
Yeah.
realizing it, and they set him up in a crisis communication training session.
Yeah.
That's an extraordinary story if you haven't looked into it. But they set people up, and you know, it's interesting to see a lot of Black people come out and defend Joe Rogan and say he's not
Mhm.
racist. This idea that if somebody had said that word in the past and they're on video, that makes them racist. I wonder how many people at fucking CNN have been caught on video at some point in time saying the most racist fucking shit ever. Probably
Yeah.
a whole bunch of fucking
And
people.
meaning it, and they mean it, because when
Right.
you're saying it secretly and you don't want anybody to hear it, that's because you mean that shit.
Yeah.
As opposed to popping off at
Right.
jokes
Yeah,
with your
yeah,
friends. Totally different context there. At Relapse, I'm not going to name names because I'm sure this person would not want me to make them responsible for the joke that they told. But one of my favorite open mic
I
stand-ups
know
did
what you're
one of
talking
this.
about.
Do you know what I'm
I
talking
know
about?
exactly what you're talking about.
Every time he did an open mic, he told the same rape joke. And
Yep.
that shit was funny
Surprise sex is what
every
you're talking about.
time.
Talking about
Surprise sex.
Yeah. I know what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I laughed every time. And like I am like maybe honor bound as a woman to be offended by that, but I wasn't. It was hilarious because
Yeah, it was funny.
it's obvious that it's not how he thinks. That's obvious that that's
No,
not
he's not a
his
fucking
ideology.
rapist. He's just
Right.
making like it's, and that's what you see at open mics, which is, I haven't been to an open mic in a long time. I
can't
haven't
imagine
been-
they're good right now.
I don't know what they're like right now, but I imagine it's probably real sensitive. People are probably afraid, probably a lot of self-censorship. But open mics are at least they used to be just such a wonderful thing because
Yes.
I used to be at them all the time when I first started doing comedy for hours and hours because there'd be like 30 comedians. And mind you, there's only audience members for a small portion of the time. So these are people really like just working on shit in front of a little bit of audience, a little bit of comedians, and they're just fucking around. They're just trying to figure out what they can do and what they can't do. Things in their mind they thought sounded funny because you take words out of context, you just juxtapose stuff. It's not people who are fucking KKK members coming out saying, I'm gonna fucking do this. It's nothing fucking like that. There's no
I'm
Klan
the Grand
members
Dragon
coming
and I'm here to
to the
laugh.
fucking open mic night. There's this guy who yeah, right, exactly. This guy he used to do this joke and rest his soul. He was one of the sweetest fucking people I've ever known in my life. God bless him. He died a couple of years ago. He's a fucking great person. Just one of the best people I had ever met in my life. I'm sure you probably came across of him at some point in time, but he used to do this joke simply because of the boundaries that it crossed, where he would get on stage and he would say the N-word and the F word. The F word being related to gay people or cigarette, depending on
the gay F word.
Right. Yeah. So you'd say N-word, F word, N-word, F word. And then you say to the audience, all right, I'm going to say N-word. You're going to say F word. And he'd say N-word. And then he'd hold the microphone. And the whole audience at the time would shout out the F word. Right.
Yep.
So everybody in the audience is shouting that out. And today that
I
would
remember
never
this
happen.
bit.
The whole fucking audience shouted that out. And then he'd switch it and he'd go, now I'm going to say the F word and you say the N word. And he's making a point. And he'd say the F word. And then he'd hold the microphone out. Silence.
Yep. I was there for that. I mean, I'm sure he did it multiple times, but I've been there for that one.
I'd be that one guy in the crowd who said it.
Yelled it.
You have to understand, we lived in Atlanta. Like, I don't know. You could say the F word. You can't say the N word. It's just different.
Yeah,
I just want to say this was my favorite tweet of mine from this week. Hear me out. It'll be like the Avengers, but instead of superpowers, and it's Kramer, Joe Rogan, Paula Deen, and Papa John.
Oh my god!
Right.
Did you see the actress from Westworld who made the video on the first day of Black History Month? She's the light-skinned African American actress. Her dad is white. Her mom is black.
Candy Newton.
Yes, that's her.
Where
And
she's
beautiful.
crying.
Yes, and she's
Yeah, I
crying,
saw that.
and she's saying, "I'm so sorry they cast me over you darker females. My mom looks like you." Like I mean, that's
Oh
a
my
stunt.
God.
That's definitely a stunt. But just that message that it's this intersectionality on steroids. So like you're supposed to hate half of yourself if you're
Yeah,
interracial
it
during
is
Black History Month.
Right.
wild that they have talked people into hating themselves.
Right. Obama
Like-
should be coming out speaking for that.
That's just wild to me. But you know what I was thinking? I was thinking this is a Valentine's Day episode. Well, it's one of 2 Valentine's Day
I could kiss
episodes
you
we're
through
doing.
the screen, dude.
I mean, if you could, I would. But I thought maybe we should field some Valentine's Day and love talk. So I just want to really get into the soul of Brad Lee Binkley.
Oh, I thought we were gonna read a Stacey Abrams or Selena Montgomery romance novel.
Oh, yeah.
No,
No, I've
I don't
got
want to.
that queued up for later.
No, I don't want to bone her on screen. But no, I was like, what can make this a Valentine's Day episode? And so I would like you to describe in excruciating detail your first kiss.
All right, so I'm surrounded by 6 or 7 prostitutes. I'm 12 years old. I'm in the middle of a dumpster. That's it. No. All right, so
Yeah,
that's my
prostitutes
second
don't
kiss. That's
kiss.
my second kiss. My first kiss, and it's the details of it. I don't know how many details I remember, but I was like 12, I think, or 11. It's probably 11, and we were playing spin the bottle, and there's a girl that I liked, and it landed on me, and we kissed, and I had like a feeling I'd never felt before because I liked her, and she liked me as well, and it was it really is like magic when you're a kid. Things are very different when you're a kid
Yeah.
than when you're older because you're experiencing things for the first time, and so that a memory burns into my mind. And I'll never forget it. It's just you feel like you're walking on water after it happens, but I was so nervous. I was very, very nervous. I thought that I was stupid and that she didn't like me, but she did, and I liked her, and we kissed, and I probably fucked it up, I'm sure. But I went home, and I was just like, oh my God, that was amazing. I want to do it again. And we never went out until we were in college. We dated a little bit, but years later we went out. So it was cool. She was a cool girl. She's a nice girl. Hope she's doing well. But that was my
How could
first kiss,
she
yeah.
not like you? You're a beautiful boy.
Oh,
Beautiful
stop
boy.
it,
Yeah.
stop it.
Beautiful boy.
Count
but
on
no,
me to be your Jewish mother. So
I love it.
I think that first kisses in early adolescence are like definitely going to be better than late adolescence because I didn't. There was like one girl that I actually liked it all when I was a teenager, and so I had waited. And so the first time I kissed a girl, and you can make fun of me if you want, was when I was 18 years old because I didn't like anyone enough. And like I'm very guarded physically. Like one of my primary love language is touch. And so it's like for me, you have to hit a certain point before I hug you. Like I would hug the hell out of you, Binkley. But I just waited. And so I remember that my first kiss was on my front porch, on the porch swing, very pretty girl. Like very pretty girl. But it was like I had put this thing in my mind as to what it would be for years.
Yeah.
For years. And it was colder than I expected. And I was just like, well, that was slightly gross. but then I was like,
You're like,
let's do it again.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that a lot. But it was so bizarre because I remember being like,
It was a sensation
not
you've
what
never
I'd
felt
like.
before. Yeah. Yeah.
but then I was like, let's do it again. But no, it's wild because it's like I remember that I'll never forget it. I was older, but it's like that was the person. I think that's the person you remember the most.
Yeah.
It could be the first time you fall in love or whatever, but I think the first person you kiss, you never forget, and it like it ingrains in your brain for the rest of your life.
Because
Like,
there's
I'll
like a
never be
build up
able to
to it
forget her.
too. You know, you see it on TVs and movies and stuff like that, and so there's an expectation of what it's supposed to be like. My second kiss, well, at least it was going to be my second kiss. It didn't work out the way I planned. So I knocked on the door and she opened it. And so I opened up the pizza box and had a sausage pizza ready for her. And she shut the door on me promptly. And I was like, I guess I,
Oh,
shouldn't have
you
put
shut
my
up with the
penis to the.
pizza.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, for some reason, women don't expect Irish sausage.
Right. Yeah. So that's what kids learn today is they learn the, stick your dick
The
to
hole
a
in the
hole in the
box.
bottom of a pizza box and
Right.
go bring them a sausage pizza.
Can we just talk briefly about how Lonely Island's Dick in a Box is one of the best songs
That's
that was
great.
ever
Lonely
written?
Island's got a lot of good stuff, a lot of funny stuff. See, so people like that, I can't imagine. Maybe publicly they might take a position that supports the progressive agenda or whatever, but I can't imagine people who make songs like that. Great album, Lonely Island's great, man. Those guys are funny. I can't imagine people like that being against Joe Rogan, or I just can't. Maybe publicly,
Well,
but
and
yeah,
I think there are a lot of people, like, I don't know if you saw this on Twitter. The Rock came out in defense of Joe Rogan, and then he was sent the N-word video and he backstepped. I think that there are a lot of people who have, I mean, I think it's true no matter what, but there are a lot of people out there who like Joe or like what he does, or, I mean, like, we don't emulate Joe Rogan on this show, except that when I reformatted a while back, by the way, it's essentially our first anniversary as the Mad Ones.
congratulations.
So
I love
more-
you guys. You guys,
We love you
guys
too.
are
Thank you.
But when one of the things that I changed was, it was something that Joe Rogan had said. It's not that I want to be the Christian or libertarian or whatever Joe Rogan. I think that doing that's stupid. Never try to be someone else. But he had said that the reason he thought his podcast was successful was that he started making it for himself. He started making it, he wanted to have fun. He thought that if he was having fun, then his listeners would be having fun. And that's how you find success.
That's such
And I
great.
took that to
advice. I mean,
heart.
that's great. That's a really great concept.
And that's what we do. And so it's like, yeah, we have a lot of different topics. We talk about different things that interest us. It's kind of Joe Rogan-esque in that way, but with like, I haven't taken quite as many kicks to the head as Joe Rogan, so I think maybe I come across as slightly less stoner than him. Yeah,
Except that one episode.
that one episode where I couldn't think.
Yeah.
Did
He had
you
eaten
get a little stoned one episode?
He ate
Yes,
some
it's
edibles.
on Rockfin.
And by the end of the show, he could not function. I
That's
didn't know where the buttons
hilarious.
were. And I'm like, hey, dude, you got to hit
And
the
what was
button because I don't
The
know where it's at.
funniest thing to me though about that whole situation was I couldn't function. I was just like gone. But she would say, "Hey, do the thing," and then I would pop into the thing and do it just as I always do it, and then go
Muscle
back to
memory.
not thinking. Like,
Yeah.
well, here's what and then I was gone again.
That's funny.
Fascinating.
It can be, depending on what kind of weed it is, it can be an interesting time to
It was an
do
edible.
a show or edible weed to perform while having weed. I went to a Hawks game a little while back, and my friend gave me. I was like, all right, I took like this. I shouldn't say Hawks game. I should say a Golden State Warriors game so that it's legal. And my friend gave me this edible and like some liquid weed, and I'd never had. I don't do a lot of weed. So when I
Yeah,
do
I
it,
don't
I'm
either.
like just like I either fall asleep or I'm like I'm already.
I know
weird.
you-
I'm just fucking
don't-
bonkers wild if I smoke the right kind of weed.
I know
That's
you
how it
don't
was.
do weed because you refer to it as do weed.
As do weed, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I totally. I'm like a boomer when it comes to it. You want to do some weed tonight, guys? Yeah.
We're gonna do the weed.
You want to smoke some of that reefer, boys?
hey, we did some weed that night, and I spent about 2 hours making puns, yelling out puns about the other team's name. It was that we were playing. They were playing the Denver Nuggets, so it was a goal. It was just a gold mine of puns. It was like the Nuggets are on fire. And shit like just the whole fucking game. And the people directly in front of us thought it was the funniest shit they've ever heard. The people to the left of us were so fucking annoyed with me, but I couldn't stop. I could not stop with the fucking nuggets puns. And my buddy took some pictures at one point, put on my Instagram. And the next day I was like, dude, why'd you put that shit on Instagram? They look insane, dude. He took them down.
So do you want me to tell you? Okay, not first. We'll get to, I want to ask Jessica about her first kiss because I feel like that's going to be wonderfully awkward.
Oh, yeah.
But do you want to hear about the first time I smoked weed?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the thing with me and weed. I don't use marijuana.
You don't do weed
at all. I don't
He
do
doesn't
the
do
weed.
the weed. Yeah.
But a big reason for that, besides just like some weird idea that I need to be in control of myself all the time so I can make good jokes. But beyond that, my cousin was smoking weed and he was like, I need to stop, but I'll only stop if you smoke with me one last time. And I was like, brother, if that's what it takes,
like he's gonna stop forever.
Stop forever.
Okay.
Dude, we smoked that bowl.
Hold up. He didn't stop forever though, did he?
I do not know if he's still doing it now, but he did stop later on for a good while.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Continue the story.
But I smoked it. Half of the time I smoke weed, which is a handful of times max, I get like really bad vertigo and I throw up.
Oh, yeah.
Like it sucks.
Yeah. It's like a 1 in 100 people
Yeah,
get, like
that's
throw
the
up when they
worst.
smoke weed. Yeah.
Yeah, it sucks. But this time I didn't. And we were sitting there and he was like, you may not feel very high the first time. And I was like, no, brother, I'm here. Because we're sitting there and there are a couple of things. First, he was like, what do you want to listen to? And I was like, Led Zeppelin. And he started a song and I was like, oh God, it's so good.
Black Dog.
And then I don't even know.
It's
I
an
can't
excellent
remember.
Song.
It is. And what's interesting about Black Dog was it was specifically written, the beat was specifically written so that people couldn't dance to it.
Really?
Yeah. I love that little factoid.
I can sure fucking get high to it though.
Yeah, totally.
but he turns on the Led Zeppelin and halfway through the song, my perception of time is gone. And so I stop and I go, dude, what is this music? And he was like, it's literally the same song. It's been a minute and a half.
You felt
I
like
was
it was
like,
forever.
wow. And so we listened to Led Zeppelin and we listened to Mumford and Sons and we listened to a couple of other things. But I remember two specifically. And these are descriptions that will always make sense to me that may never make sense to anyone else in the history of the world. But he was like, I just sat up and I was like, it was the Led Zeppelin song. And I was like, man, you know what this sounds like? And he was like, what? And I was like, if you drop a pebble into some water and it's the slow ripples out, that's what his voice sounds like. and it to this day, it makes perfect sense to me. And then I forget what the other one was, but Mumford and Sons. Here's a factoid about me. You know those, like, when we were kids, they'd have like folders or little pictures that were like holograms and they were like 3D images and you'd move them and it'd change.
Oh yeah.
I cannot handle touching that shit. Like at all.
Like
if I run my finger against that, like it goes up my spine and I hate it.
Huh.
We're listening to Mumford and Sons and he goes, what does this sound like? And I was like, and I explained what it was. I was like, you know those hologram things from when we were a kid? It's like running your fingers across. His voice is like running your fingers across that, but in a good way. And it makes complete sense to me. I don't even know what the third song was, but he goes, okay, what does this sound like? What does his voice sound like? And I was like, have you ever seen like one of those commercials, like laundry commercials, where they have some fabric and it's underwater? I was like, his voice sounds like silk underwater.
Yeah. Hey, you come up with a lot of interesting creative stuff. That the next day you go, man, this was brilliant last night. I'm trying to understand what I loved about it the night before. Like I remember I used to just fucking write like crazy when I would smoke back in the day. And then the next day I'd be like, what the fuck is this shit mean?
But what's funny is the fact that it still makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Like it's like that is exactly correct. But one thing I will say, as vaguely as possible, because I don't want to be a gross person, but if you've smoked and your partner has smoked, and you join together as one,
Oh yeah,
that is like an
it's
incredible
definitely different.
experience.
Yeah.
And then I threw up
Oh,
for
it's
like
not
3
in a
hours.
racist way, but yes,
No, just okay.
Right.
I quit smoking some months ago, I think August. So I went from like smoking chronically for like 20 years to this is like month 5 or 6. And
That's great, by the way. I have to say, I
Thank
think I've told
you.
you this before, but the fact that the way that you have presented that online, and because that's a tough thing for people to do, and I think that
Thank you.
I think it's great. I think it changes people's lives when they stop smoking in a good way.
It does.
Yeah.
There were some unexpected things, and something that I really miss is how good music sounds. Like I would smoke, and then I would put on like some Thelonious Monk or something like that. And not that I don't still appreciate jazz in the same way, but there's something about the combination of jazz and weed that's like having
It's the
good
only way
wine,
it's good.
like having wine paired with food perfectly
Yeah.
that's the same kind of thing you get when you listen to jazz when you're smoking. Not that I'm advocating it, kids. There's other ways to enjoy jazz. But something that I didn't realize would happen is when I stopped smoking, I started reading again.
Yeah.
And because I was chronically smoking like 3 or 4 times a day from the moment I woke up till the moment I went to bed, I wasn't reading books because my attention span wouldn't allow me to focus long enough to get into a book. So I might listen to audiobooks here and there. I can read stuff on the internet. I can read articles, but full-length books had been kind of robbed from me. And when I was a child, I was a major reader. I would put stacks of books away. 20 years as a pot smoker through most of my adult life, I hadn't read. Now that I'm off weed, I've put away The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. I'm in the middle of Crime and Punishment. Like all of these classic novels that I should have been reading throughout the course of this last 20 years, I'm actually like getting them back. And I was like, wow, something really important was stolen from me, not by anyone else, through my own actions. But I will trade how good music sounds when you're high for being able to read books again.
Well,
So
and
you
when
probably
just-
feel
when-
better too, just on a daily
I
basis,
can-
I would think.
When I wake up in the morning, I don't have a cough anymore. And that was something I had just accepted as a weed smoker that, okay, you're going to cough a little bit when you wake up. Well, it's gone now. I don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, I used to tell
Kinda
people,
great.
so like I've smoked plenty of weed in my life, and I like it. I've had good experience with it. It's fun, but I can totally relate to what you're saying. I don't smoke it now. I'm more productive when I don't. But I used to tell friends of mine who would smoke on a regular basis, and they would be like, no, I can smoke it and I can function all the time. And I'd be like, there's two types of people.
Function,
There's two
but
types
you're
of
not
people.
getting.
There's people who say they can smoke weed every day and function, and there's people who are lying to themselves. Those are the two types of people, because you can't really function at your best when you're high. You can do some things, and I'm not criticizing, because I'm totally like, I look, it's fun to get to smoke a little weed every now and then, but
Well, I could function. I did my dishes. I made my dinner. I paid my bills. I was functioning, but there were parts of me that I had put on the shelf.
Yeah.
And wasn't accessing. And
and when you started talking, that's what I was thinking about, is because I remember when I was a kid, I listened to so much music constantly, was always listening to music. And then over the past few years, it's become reading. It's become listening to a book, or listening to a podcast, or listening to freaking
sex noises,
lectures by different. I think the only lectures worth listening to for me are like biblical scholars and
those are cool.
Theologians.
Cool.
Like it's fascinating to me. Like I've been listening through, the Bible Project has an app now, and they have a podcast on ancient cosmology. And it's fascinating because it's looking back at like the Sumerians, the Babylonians, and
that's neat.
Their concepts of the cosmos and the creation of them, and how the Hebrew scriptures were a direct debate and repudiation of some of these ideas. Like and I know that I think when you're a kid, you're kind of in a high state anyway.
Yeah.
because you're in this different mind zone.
Everything's
like,
it's new and stimulus is everywhere.
Yeah,
Right,
and so
right,
like when you were saying that, I was like, yeah, no, I get that from a different angle. It's like with
right.
age came this desire for like knowledge and getting deep into things and
I was
sussing out truth.
I was reading in a book that was written by a monk whose name escapes me at the moment, but it's talking about how monastics go about trying to experience God. And you can have these sort of moments that happen in the same way. He described it as the same way that lightning hits the ground,
Do you know what I call
where
them?
you're what?
I got it from Scrubs, but I call them crystallizing moments.
It's a good show.
Crystallite. Yeah, right, right. And so what he was talking about, how to experience one of these moments, and when we are constantly filling our bodies with things to satisfy our needs. So, like, if we're hungry, we eat. If we're uncomfortable, we smoke weed or we take Xanax. If we're bored, we distract ourselves with our phones. So we're constantly like feeding ourselves, feeding our earthly form in order to constantly have our needs satisfied. And so we never allow ourselves to empty the vessel out enough that something else can come in, that we can experience something that's beyond the physical realm. And so when monastics are going through prayer and fasting and self denial, it is an attempt to sort of empty out the vessel. And
Yeah.
only when you have this, like, kind of like blank open slate, when you're you got to be a little bit hungry, you got to be a little bit
Mhm.
uncomfortable, you have to be
Yeah.
ready and open
I
and
think-
fertile.
I think I need to address the ADHD or whatever is in my system, because several weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did a 3-day water only fast.
Mhm, mhm.
And I couldn't, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm so hungry, I can't think, I can't pray, I can't do these things. It was
Right.
just the same issues that I deal with now, which
Right.
is like, it's hard for me to read. I love to read, but it's hard because
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
brain splits off because,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it's ADHD or anything else. I'm not diagnosing myself, but it seems to me that in my mind, I have a need to interact and to think and to ponder. Like it's fine for me to read a
Mhm.
book where someone is explaining a concept, but 9 out of 10 times I'm sitting there and I hear the first words of a concept and I start rabbit holing and
Start
thinking
associating and
them
shit, yeah.
through.
Right. Right.
And so and it's productive, but it's very hard for me to read a lot
You
of
can't
times
get like
because
centered and quiet
right.
and
And so
empty.
I
Yeah.
did these 3 days and that was still the issue. And so it's
Mhm.
like I've got to figure out what I can do to do that because it's not
Yeah.
food. I mean, I love sugar. You can tell from my very, very voluptuous form that I love sugar. But it's interesting because I thought for sure when I was emptied of these things that I would be able to completely focus
Mhm.
Well,
on
I-
this
I'll
or that, and I couldn't
Yeah.
freaking do it.
I'll tell you what, when it comes to that, I've had similar experiences with a challenge focusing. One of the reasons, other than getting clean, that I love taking a shower is that I don't even think about it this way, is that is my escape from all the technology. And I'm never more focused and I never have better ideas than I do when I'm in the fucking shower because
Yeah.
I'm with
Yeah.
my thoughts and I'm reflecting and I'm not having constant distractions that I can
Right.
easily get to. And going to the lake or going outside and leaving the phone inside, it's just it's hard to do today because we
Yeah.
all rely on that. But doing that, I'm never more clear in my mind than when I do that. I remember the first time, and it's crazy because we have these vivid memories of things they leave a big impression on us. And it's crazy that this is one of my vivid memories. The first time that I broke one of my iPhones, one of my first iPhones, I didn't have a phone for like 4 days. I remember that period because it was one of the most fucking liberating periods that I've had in the last 10 years because I was free of all
Yep.
the distractions for a while and I was clear-minded and It was great. So the technology that we rely on, I think, also can contribute to these problems of distraction.
And this is why monasteries are in these far-flung remote locations. So like as I'm talking about this guy who's a monk who's saying these things about like emptying yourself, it takes them years to get this way. So if like your first swing at a 3-day water fast, you didn't quite like get the illumination or whatever it is, like don't worry
Well-
about that, because like we're in the world here. It's not like we're in the woods. We're not at a monastery where we have complete peace to focus on that kind of thing. It's harder for us, as a matter of fact, to achieve
Well,
those states.
And so it's like Heather said here, ADHD means hyper focusing on one thing for a period of time.
Yeah.
And I feel like when I'm describing what I'm going through, it seems more scatterbrained than it is. It's like, so for the past probably 4 years, I've been thinking off and on about the theological concepts of paradise and what hell would be.
Yep.
I've been
Talked
thinking
about
about
this
this
last
for
night.
a lot. And so it's something that I don't think of constantly, but I think of when I have the clarity to think through these things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so what seems to happen with me is I have this deeply rooted drive to not just know, but to understand and to connect. And so like when it comes to reading books about theology, I just finished a book called what's the name of that book? Surprised by Hope by N.T. Wright, which is a fantastic book about the resurrection and the Christian idea of resurrection. It's a great book. It took me a long time to read that. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that he would say one sentence and then I would have to connect all of the dots down the entire thing and try to come to a conclusion that was built not on just his words, but on, like, for me personally, the yardstick that I use is the Bible. And so going in and making these connections and making things make sense. And so I've landed in a place now. So now I'm ready to move on to a different idea. I'm ready to firmly set myself in a new idea. But what happens is, regardless of what I'm reading, I typically go back when I need to that time, that place, that idea, and work it out.
I gotcha. I can relate to that. A lot of people talk about speed reading, and I understand the concept of speed reading, but I'm not. But if it's something I like if I remember the first time I read Plato, Socrates, it changed my life. Just the way of thinking. It was very, very life changing. It just expands your mind. I didn't breeze through that shit, man. It was like a fucking sentence at a time. And I'd be, whoa, and I'd think about it, and I'd relate to it, and just make a meal of it. I can totally get that. You want to dive deep and really absorb the knowledge.
And one, I think that like a lot of people will tell me, get off of social media, get off of this and get off of that. You know, like you're talking about your experience with losing the iPhone. But for me, that is counterproductive to who I am as a person, because right now there's no one to talk to besides, I mean, like there's my wife, but beyond her, like I don't have like friends in person that I can talk to.
that.
And so I connect with Binkley, I connect with Jessica, I connect with Monica, I connect in these different ways through social media so that I have a semblance of community in my life. And so like losing the phone is unthinkable to me, simply because that means I lose my friends.
Yeah, I don't think you have to lose it totally. I think that periodic breaks from it, from that, just to clear your mind in nature. For me, anyway, I enjoy.
That's what I was kind of trying to drive at with the talking about the monastic. It made me realize that smoking weed all of the time I was doing to comfort myself instead of letting myself fulfilling a need, instead of allowing myself to be comfortable or uncomfortable. But because I've allowed myself to be uncomfortable, I've been able to sit and think, okay, why am I uncomfortable? What is making me unable to handle my reality without some kind of like, pacifier?
I love
And
that. I mean, I think that's
yeah.
such a great concept. I don't mean to interrupt. I think that
No,
that is
you're
a
okay.
brilliant concept. It's just a lot of the things that we do it because we don't want to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
There
being able to
is
point it out and it's great exercise. You're very self-aware because we don't want to point that out. We don't want to recognize that because we seek to avoid what is not pleasurable, what is uncomfortable,
right,
but we can only grow once we recognize what is uncomfortable.
right.
And
And
I
that's the
think that
concept of nature, that without discomfort, an organism will not grow. If
Right.
you have everything that you need right there, you're not going to go out. So it's like, okay, yeah, maybe I can function while I smoke weed, but what am I capable
Right.
of if I don't?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and so it makes that this makes sense on a couple different levels. For one, as a father, I forget who said it, but someone said the best advice they ever received, and it was from someone you wouldn't think. Jack Black. It was from Jack Black. He said, as a parent, one of the worst things you can do is try to make a happy kid happier. And this is true on a couple different levels because kids are very resilient creatures. They're very anti-fragile. And so if you disrupt a kid who is entertaining themselves and having fun, to put an iPad in their hand, to put a video game in their hand, you're
Mhm.
actually stopping these natural processes of learning. You're stopping these natural processes of conflict and resolution. You're taking away this thing. And so it's like, if you see a kid that is doing something dangerous, but he's doing it carefully, let him do it.
Yeah.
And so in my opinion, thinking about this, it makes me think of that, but also
We learn the boundaries. Yeah,
right.
you test that shock, wire if you're like a dog. Not to say we're dogs, but we learn in similar ways though. Dogs
We
only
should
go
be
to
so
the extent of
happy.
the shock collar. I don't
Yeah.
use a shock collar, by the way. I just
But
I
it's
mean,
like
not on the dog, right?
there are these things. And so we talked to a girl named Heather Nielsen from Fight the Beast a couple of months ago, or not a couple months ago, a couple of weeks ago, um, about how so we didn't talk specifically about this, but as humans over time, from childhood to adolescence to adulthood, we have these naturally formed coping mechanisms that we use to get rid of the discomfort.
Mhm.
And so when we talked to her, we talked particularly about pornography addiction and self pleasure addiction, because this is something that people use, guilty, to quiet that raging voice on the inside that needs passive what's the word? Needs
Pacification.
peace. I thought it might be, but it sounded weird. Pacification. It needs to be pacified.
Mhm.
And a lot of times we jump to the easiest possible way to pacify that maybe dark, or conflicting or uncomfortable voice that tells us where there are these lacking bits in our lives. There are these lacking places that we need to fix. And if we fixed them rather than just doing these shallow, mind altering, a lot of times coping mechanisms, we could actually become better and stronger people.
So this is an
I
important
have to
point.
run to the bathroom. I'll be
Sure.
right back.
Yeah.
So this is an important point to the illumination factor, which it was described as lightning hitting the ground. The way that lightning is attracted to hitting the ground is they become oppositely charged of each other, and there's a like a reaction. So that voice, that sort of hunger, is your inner being charged in such a way, having your atoms aligning in such a way so that it's attracting that force.
And
And
maybe
when you're hunger, you can have that discharge. You can have that bam of illumination.
and maybe a social media and a personal communication fest may be something that's good for me. Perhaps that's true, but it's scary because it's like, I mean, besides my wife, obviously, who I love and love to talk to, it's it's hard to, because I compartmentalize different things. There are different topics for different people. There are different tensions that I can pull at and solve
Yeah.
problems with, and solve these little lacks of understanding that I have in my head.
Right.
And the idea that I'd lose that is harmful. It's not harmful, but it feels like it would be harmful to me. So maybe we got deep in this. Dadgum.
I love it.
It's
I
like we
love the
have these little
deepness.
moments of panic about losing these little comforts that
Well,
we have. And it's
And
not to
that's when
say
you go to the shit, is in those moments of panic. That's when you go to
Right,
the vices.
that little panic going, oh, I'm uncomfortable. And so not to say that those things are bad. They're not bad, because your community is not bad. Talking to people that you love is not bad. The idea behind a fast would be only to remove yourself from your comfort objects
yeah.
long enough to be hungry. Not
Well,
to say
and that's the thing.
bad
It's hard.
just to allow yourself to be hungry and figure
and-
out where your hunger really comes from.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part, I think, for me, is that I'm hungry always
Mhm.
in the metaphysical, mental area.
Mhm.
Like it's not that I'm starving. I'm not starving. I'm doing very well in those areas, but it's like I'm always hungry for that. It's just this. This may have brought some good things to me, having this conversation.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that was a clue in for me, because at the idea that I would not have, like, if I couldn't find weed that day, I would get a little panicky. Not enough. I'm not like running around crazy. I'm not yelling at anybody, but that little bit of panic inside of me, or trying to think of something today that might, if I lost my phone, I might get a little
Yeah.
like,
You get anxious.
get anxious, and so not that I have, and because everybody knows I'm on Twitter every day, but on Sunday, for example, I'll put this thing away and I'll give myself that one day, that one day a week where I'm not looking at this thing. And I don't always do it,
By the
Well,
way,
when you lose
just
your phone or something, or when maybe you can't find weed for a certain day, or whatever it is that makes people anxious, or I've experienced similar things plenty of times. It's getting through that day as a source of strength.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly it.
When you realize, okay, I don't have the thing that I thought that I needed, but I also survived and I'm fine. That
Yeah.
makes you better. It
Not
makes
to
you realize you
mention,
don't need it.
like, if you go to the gym, I can go to the gym. I can pick up the 5-pound dumbbells and do it 200 times and do almost nothing for myself. But it's those moments of difficulty when
Mhm.
I pick up the 50-pound dumbbell, where I'm fighting against myself to find edification, that which I don't do a lot of. I mean, this is not impressive, but
It's impressive.
but it's those moments when there's conflict within you,
Yes.
where you have not just the expectation or the ability, but there's this challenge that you give yourself every time you do something like this. It challenges you to grow, because you're stuck in the conflict, and conflict is what makes and no offense to the ladies, but conflict is what makes men.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. My priest described it in a way that hit and wasn't necessarily gender based, which was it's the rubber meeting the road.
Yeah.
You can spin your wheels, and your wheels spin very fast, and you're very good at making them spin, but until they hit the pavement, you're not going anywhere. So you
Right.
can't get any traction until you meet resistance.
You
And
don't
that
realize how
resistance,
strong you are until you meet resistance as well,
and
because you
Right.
don't think you can do it. But once
right.
you do it, you realize I can't fucking do it.
Yep.
I wasn't as dependent on whatever the vice was or whatever it is as I thought I was. Now, if I want to continue to do whatever as a source of to complement my strength, I know now that I can go on without whatever it was.
Sure.
Well, and I don't know if this has been said before, but I think that I mean, it could be for, we could make up a nice one for ladies too, but I think that that's an important thing for men to realize, is that it's conflict that makes men.
Right. We learn to avoid fucking conflict in this day and age, you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's the tension. There's and I use that phrase and I talk about tension in a lot of different ways. But it's the tension of between who you are and who you could be.
Yep.
It's and to quote Switchfoot, because that's what I accidentally started doing, between who you are and who you could be.
Mhm.
That's where you find the grit and the determination to actually be who you want to be.
Mhm.
And so
It's like that scene in Thor Ragnarok when he levels up, when he's fighting the Hulk, where he gets the fucking lightning through his eyes or whatever it is. It's that leveling up. It's realizing we have a source of strength that before we thought we didn't have. By
Mhm.
depriving ourselves and experiencing that discomfort, we realize that we are in fact stronger and we can in fact do more.
And
Because
sometimes
and because we live in general prosperity, we are never denied anything, and so that has to come completely from the self. That's difficult. Evolutionarily, we're not trained to deny ourselves. Self-denial does not make sense in an evolutionary standard. But now we live in a world where everything we want is at our fingertips.
Yep.
So we have to find the strength from within. You know, we don't have a famine here. You know, we don't have a great war. We don't have those things. And, you know, hopefully we don't.
Yeah. So you know Trey Duke, you know Lisa Duke,
I do.
mutual
Yeah,
friends
very
of
good
ours.
friends of mine.
This
Yeah.
makes me think of Trey. So Trey, he hurt his wrist a while back, years ago. He had an accident at work, and he was in a band, a guitar player and musician, good musician, and he couldn't play, so he hurt his wrist that he normally played the guitar with. And so what did he do? He learned to play with his other fucking hand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
A
right.
bad motherfucker, and he became awesome at it. I mean, that's when you learn something, it's very difficult to learn a musical instrument anyway. But especially when you're older, when you're a kid and it's drilled in you by other people, you can learn it. It's a little bit easier to learn. But once you get older, he fucking, after he's an adult, he hurts his fucking arm and he just learns it with the other hand. That is leveling up. That's showing you
I
can
know
do it. Yeah.
when we do physical labor, which is deeply uncomfortable to our bodies, it's not sitting in a bed of pillows. It's not sitting on a couch, which would be the most comfortable thing to do. When we go out and we do hard physical labor, how good do you feel?
You're great.
after
You feel
you do
awesome.
that?
Yeah.
well,
Right.
we're
So
not-
there's something valuable in discomfort that, like, and I think we just like hammering that point home, like just allow some discomfort to make you grow, you know?
well, and it's to make it more metaphorical, I guess, is when you battle your demons,
Mm.
when you truly decide to look the worst parts of yourself in the eye and fight them, you can overcome. You may have some times where you don't, there are times when you can't. But when you start to work on those metaphorical or mental or spiritual muscles, it comes to the point where you don't have to fight as hard. You're going to
Yeah.
fight. You're always going to fight because these are things that are ingrained in you. It's like a lot of times your inner thoughts and the way your inner monologue, the way you talk about yourself, the way you describe yourself often does not come from you. It comes from the way your parents talked about you or your teachers or
Or the
Or-
media you hear all the time. All
Right,
that shit
or-
gets programmed. Yeah.
right. And so when you get to the point where you have to fight, I think is the only thing I'm trying to get at is
And everybody has fight in them. So I think it's important here. So we can get to feel beaten down, especially in times right now where everything can just feel like shitty. We've been locked down for ever so long, restrictions, and everything can seem dark sometimes. Everybody has fucking fight in them that they don't realize that they have in them because they've been led to believe by whatever forces in society that you can only do certain things, you can only accomplish certain things. But we all have more fight than we realize. But we have these ways to distract us from or veer us away from discovering that fight. We always have things that we can just go to that may not be the best for us. It may not be bad for us, but they may not be best for us. But whenever we might confront this opportunity to level up or to challenge ourselves, we have ways to escape from that and not have to face that challenge. Because the Freudian pleasure versus pain theory, whatever, we seek the pleasure, the easy thing, the convenient thing. They offer this technology, they offer these metaverses, VR, all this fucking shit that gives us away from it. Not to say that there's not good things that can come from that stuff, because with new technology, there's always a good side, there's always a bad side. They helped people walk recently because of new technology they put into their spine, help people that were completely paralyzed walk again. That's amazing. So not to say that all technology is bad, but it is to say that we have to take it upon ourselves to recognize those moments when we can either revert to the escapism, which is such an easy thing to do in this day and age. And quite frankly, it's like sometimes it's just easier to do that. It's just easier to do that, or confront the fucking thing that we need to confront so that we can level up, so that we can better ourselves.
Right.
And we have to make that choice ourselves.
Well, think about the myth of Sisyphus. Do you know this?
No.
This story? It's Greek mythology. I can't tell you the specifics. I'm not a Sisyphus expert, but he was essentially condemned to roll a stone up a hill for all of eternity.
I know this one. Yeah.
And so you have to think that the first few times, the first 20, 30, 40, 50 times, this stone was felt impossible to get to the top of the mountain. Yet, or the top of the hill. Yet, at time 100, 150, you have to imagine that Sisyphus was able to lift this with no problem. His muscles had grown. He'd been able to do this and reach what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's absurd that he would have to do this forever. But in the context of humanity, I think that there are a lot of things like these unhealthy coping mechanisms that we've talked about that we can fight. And the first day is difficult, but once you get to day 30, day 100,
point there. So Aristotle, I believe he used to talk about this. It is literally painful to learn something new, and they've actually done studies about this. To learn something new is painful. To do something differently causes like physical pain, even if it's like fucking thought, because we don't understand this shit. And so my nephew, he's a good basketball player, and he was, I can't remember because he can play with both hands now, but I think he started off as right-handed. Yeah, it was right-handed. And my brother, his dad, is left-handed, and so he wanted to be like his dad, and so he learned to play left-handed. And as somebody who has played a lot of basketball, it is not easy to fucking learn with your new hand, especially when you can go to your strong hand and you can do better. It is painful to fucking fail over and over and over again until you start to get that muscle memory and develop it. And it's just everything tells you to go back to your other side, but to actually to level up, you have to go through that pain, which is fucking painful to learn something new. But once you get to that 100th time up the mountain, it's not painful anymore.
Well, and it's like, so specifically with my example about how I've been dealing with different theological issues over the past several years, like the first time I questioned the prevailing traditional narrative of the afterlife, of hell, of how I'd been taught my whole life, it was deeply uncomfortable. And so that's why when I'm reading other things, when I'm reading books, I'm going back to it and thinking it through, because it's painful and I can't figure it out, because it's that cognitive dissonance where I know one thing is true, but I'm clinging to something old. And so I think that with this example of Sisyphus, which I think it was Camus and Kierkegaard who talked about this, but at the end, I think it was Camus who famously said that one must, well, how did he put it? One must imagine that Sisyphus is happy. Because at the end of that, right now, I'm done with this thought for the time being. Like there may be other things that come up and challenge my ideas, but I'm happy where I am because I just spent on and off the last 4 to 6 years thinking about this intently. And so that is just the mental and the thought, the science of thought, the beauty, the art of thought is that I'm at this place where I'm happy.
Well, you know what happens though with that happiness is once you reach that place is you your brain literally has that moment where it feels so fucking good. So you've gotten through the pain and you go, oh my God.
Yep.
And you have that realization that you have reached that new level. You have developed that new strength, and it feels fucking amazing.
And you know what the beauty is? The beauty is at the end of it, I go, what is my next challenge?
I was going to say to Binkley's point about cognitive dissonance is that if you force yourself to feel that enough, you start to recognize it. And you say, oh, I'm growing a new little wrinkle in my brain right now. And you really start to embrace that pain, and it starts to feel good in the way that like the pain from working out feels good to people who lift weights. You start to go, oh, I'm growing a new wrinkle, and I really embraced it. I know this is going to sound weird, but I've embraced sucking at things.
Yeah.
When you allow yourself to suck at something for long enough, you get good at it.
Do not make me go back in time and show you the first video stuff I made for the show before it was the Mad Ones.
That's
Don't
what
make me show
improv
you
is.
that.
There's exercises in improvisational comedy when you first start taking it. Is where the idea is to fucking fail on purpose. There's stand-up comedians. Not everybody does it, but so there's a lot of people there where you'll go, all right, you need to go just fucking bomb. You need to fucking fail because
I need to do that.
Fucking fail. Because you're not going to start off as fucking Jerry Seinfeld. You have to go fail because you only learn through failure. And that's why I used to tell people with stand-up comedy, it's like the goal is not to go out there and kill every time, because if that's your goal, you're never going to fucking succeed. You're done if that's your goal. Your goal is to go out there and do what your plan is and to experience what because you're trying to learn what works and what doesn't. So you have to go out there and learn what fails so that you can then grow and figure out and test those boundaries. Failure is so fucking important, but we are taught, like a lot of people are taught as we grow up as society, is that failure is to be avoided. Failure is wrong. You're supposed to never fail, but you can't actually ever succeed, and definitely can't succeed outside of the system they created unless you fucking fail repeatedly and then grow from it and thrive from it.
You can't grow from predetermined outcomes.
Right.
And this is why I love the movie The Room. Everybody hates that movie. It's that Tommy Wiseau movie. Everybody I mentioned that movie to, they go, that movie sucks. And every person who has told me that The Room sucks has never made a movie. You've never done it.
It's so hard to make a movie.
Put together a project. You have never finished a project. Yep. Tommy Wiseau is better than all of you on every respect, and his movie sucks.
Yep.
And
I've made a short film. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I didn't know that. I've been in some short.
Find it someday.
They're not
hard to make a film. It's really hard to make a film.
Really hard. People don't realize it. And Tommy Wiseau is out of his mind. I've tried to get him on the show multiple times. He won't return my DMs, and rightly so. But he made that project. He finished that project. I know people who are really good at things and they don't finish them.
They don't finish it, especially fucking movies too, because it's such a coordinated effort, and it's so hard to make even a bad movie, especially if you're not well funded. These big budget things, they can pay people to just do shit, but if you're independent doing that, it's so fucking hard to make this shit.
When I watch The Room, it reminds me of someone with so much determination to make a project happen that you ignore everybody who tells you to stop.
Yeah,
and
right.
That movie is grit, it is bone, it is sweat, it is everything that is great about humanity, and it's a shitty movie.
And so that type of effort, though, even as bad as it is, it's like, okay, so somebody looking at that say, I don't care how bad that movie is, that person fucking saw it through, I want to hire them to work on some other part of
That's right. And so I'm grateful to Tommy Wiseau. He is responsible for a major development in my growth.
Totally. It's like, absolutely. Like with stand-up comedy, it's fucking better to go out there and fucking bomb over and over again and learn from it than it is to never go out and perform because you think you got to have the perfect set before you ever step on stage.
Well, and that's the thing. I need to do at least one open mic for stand-up before I die because,
It'll change your life.
I like to think I'm pretty funny.
You are
but
funny.
I'm terrified. Well,
it's a failure. People are terrified of. They're terrified of the failure, which is you're gonna fucking fail. And I say this knowing that I'm like it still strikes a fear in me. But you got to have that fear. If you don't have that fear, then you're not going to be sharp. But like people try and avoid the very thing that is necessary for them to succeed. You have to fucking fail. You have to fucking bomb. Nobody doesn't bomb. Jerry Seinfeld, after being a fucking like billionaire doing Seinfeld, he went out and did his tour again, and he was bombing at open mic nights.
That's right. That's right. And
Well-
friends, anybody who listens to this show, please DM Tommy Wiseau and tell him to come on the Mad Ones because he is my effing hero.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Do me that favor.
Tommy Wiseau
Tommy Wiseau, please come on our show. We love you.
and John Foreman. I want to talk to John Foreman.
I
Gosh
can't
darn
wait to
it.
talk to John Foreman
Ugh.
from Switchfoot. Yeah.
But no, I mean, but that the idea of rolling the stone up the hill is such an interesting one because like I didn't quite reach the crescendo of my point. But when you fight your demons enough, when you finally beat them, you're always going to fight. But at the end of the day, when you've gained the knowledge, the strategy, the strength to fight those demons, it becomes lesser and lesser every time those demons come.
Yep. Yeah.
And you're able to move past that. And so there are demons that I'm still fighting, haven't overcome yet.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of things that I feel like Sisyphus, when he's able to roll that stone up the hill the 900th time, I'm happy that I'm able to do it, that I've done it. And I'm looking for the new stone. I'm looking for the new challenge. And it's a beautiful thing that we live in this world and in these minds that don't, I mean, there's some people, I guess, that settle for nothing, that settle for mediocrity, that settle for stopping where they are. But there's this unlimited potential within me, within you, within Jessica, within people who are listening, who can push past that and become something. I mean, most people are mediocre. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a mediocre. But you don't have to be that. You know what I mean? You don't have to stop.
You make a great point there. It's getting in the habit of, and it's hard because you can go in periods of time in your life when you're just enthusiastic about overcoming obstacles and failing, a habit of failing, learning, and overcoming, getting strength, knowing I fucking did it before and I'll do it again. And then you can go through lulls in your life where you feel like you can't overcome, where you feel like it's been so long and you can forget how strong you once were or what you once accomplished. So that's where reflection is an important thing, where we often are deprived of reflection because it's easy to escape and not reflect because we all fear reflection because it's judgment on ourselves and we fear judgment on ourselves. But if we do reflect upon ourselves, we can remember, especially in those times when we feel like we are stuck, we should remember those times because we all have, every single person listening, every person on the planet has those times where we have, to the surprise of many around us, overcome and done something that others didn't think we could, that we might not have thought we could. We just have to remember those times that we did that and just say, we can fucking do that again because we were that strong. We can't let these times where we've been in a lull define us. Let those times that we were strong define us.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I could climb up a 25-foot rock face with a rope until I was forced to on a hike. Never follow a hippie to a second location because you might end up on the side of a mountain.
That should be on a shirt, by the way.
Facing a 25-foot embankment of stone that you have to climb on a rope, and you're a fat waitress from Atlanta, and you are not equipped to do that. You find out who you are that day.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I could do that until it was like either you do this or we have to call a helicopter in to come get you out of this ravine.
They threw you into the gauntlet.
They did. Never follow a hippie to a second location.
And I will say, aside from hippies, one of the things people need to learn, and something that I need to learn, something I've learned, you keep learning, is that it's okay to trust someone else. It's okay to find the people that understand your vision and can follow it through even when you're not there. So, for example, just so you guys know, at the end of March, most likely I will be moving back to my home in Birmingham, Alabama. And so for the 2 weeks preceding that, I'm not going to be on the show. And this is the first time that's ever happened. We have, what's this, episode 128? Every single one has featured this dumb face and this dumb voice. And so there's this tension that I'm dealing with where I trust Jessica completely, but I have to let go. And so it's this weird tension that I'm dealing with, but I trust her. I know that she understands our vision because it's not just mine anymore. And also the fact that I've asked Brad Binkley to take over my space during that time, and he's going to kill it. Also, and we haven't fully discussed the details, but we've also talked about having Binkley on at the end of every month to wrap up the month, to talk about what we've learned, what we've talked about, and to kind of talk about where the world is right now.
Cam and I don't watch the news, so it would be nice if someone could come in and tell us what's happening in the world.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool to do. It's a
I think
monthly
that's
thing.
great.
We'll pop in and you'll recap whatever.
Recap the
and
month,
I love hanging
talk
out with you
about
guys
things.
too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, because your episodes are longer than anyone else's in the history of the show. But so you guys know, like I said, the last 2 weeks of March, I won't be here. The 9th of March, we have a show where Jessica won't be because she has a medical thing that she's going through. And so the very lovely and wonderful Monica Perez will be taking her place as co-host for that episode. I don't know if I have a freaking guest for that or if it's just going to be us just yet. So I'm just talking about her.
I feel like Monica is enough.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. But it's just this wild thing that and it's like I said, I trust you absolutely completely with this show. But it's this it's that precipice of actually letting that happen that's like slightly hard because it's like it's my baby.
Yeah,
of
course.
Consider it like a practice for when your kids turn 16 and they're gonna drive your car.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I have a great what's the word? Example in both Brad and Monica where they've trusted me to co-host their show at different times.
Yeah.
And I the first time I did it, I don't know if it was with you or with Monica, but I was like, can I do this show? Can I talk about these things? And it was like, I know specifically like with Monica, it was like I would say things that I just thought of. And she would like light up at this. Oh, wow, I hadn't thought of that. And I was like, hell yeah, I did it.
Yeah. That's when you make Monica light up. Yeah, definitely.
But it's like with you, it's just easy. Like we just talk about what we want to talk about. But it's like there's this like thing with Monica where I'm like, I've got to impress her. And
right.
It's like when that look on her face comes up, I'm like, hell yeah, I did it. But no, it's like there's a lot in this life that's hard. There's a lot in this life, especially right now with what's going on with me and my personal life and all of that, that's hard as hell. But there's something to be said about being called to something, because there's a difference between wanting to do something and being called to do something. And I think what we're doing, even the silly episodes, even the episodes where we don't hit the deep topics or whatever, I'm called to this. And I think Jessica feels the same way. We're doing something. And it's led to certain things that I'm very proud of. But each and every person who's listening to this, you have a calling. There's something that you could be doing right now. You may or may not be doing it. But if you don't do it, if you know it, if you feel it, if there's that little tickle in the back of your brain when you think about it that says this is something you should be doing, do that. Even if it's scary. And once you get that boulder up the hill, just imagine yourself happy, because that's where you'll be.
Everybody's got a bad motherfucker inside of them.
Hell yeah.
Society has taught us to be afraid to let that bad motherfucker out. Embrace that bad motherfucker. Let him out.
I don't do an episode every day like you guys. I can't imagine doing that. But I'm 128 episodes plus 9 from the previous iteration of the show in, and the fact that I can do what I've done, and even if we haven't hit the numbers that we want, even if we haven't hit the audience quite as we hope, it's growing every day.
Dude,
There's
it's
growth.
so fucking hard to do a podcast. It's so
hard
fucking
as
hard. You
shit,
guys
man.
have done it for a while now. So it's like such a fucking accomplishment. It's so people don't realize how hard it is to produce a podcast. And you guys do a great show. You got great graphics. It looks great. It sounds great. It's really fucking hard to do a podcast. So,
I think most podcasts don't make it past episode 3.
no, they don't make it far at all.
And so like 128, even if like, well, I remember the different milestones along the way, even before we changed format and we changed things, which is just grown since then. I remember 50,000 downloads.
Yeah.
I remember these little things that like for Joe Rogan is like sneezing. Like he could sneeze and get 50,000 views.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But there are these little, and not to get too dorkily philosophical, but you have to celebrate the minor wins.
Of course, you gotta. I mean, you can't be Joe Rogan right out of the gate. I mean, he's been doing his podcast for 12 years, and he had a celebrity platform even before that. He was the host of Fear Factor, and he was on news radio, and so he had a base to build on. And even I hadn't heard of his podcast until a few years back. It takes time. It takes a lot of time to build, especially with podcasting. It's a slow grow. I spent a lot of time researching like these trends and shit. It is interesting. It's people who stick with it and they continue to improve. They continue to get better. That grow and grow and grow. And then one day, everybody's heard of them, and the people who've newly heard of them think it's new when in reality it's been around for 10 years.
Right,
well, and that's one of the crazy things that I think most people should know is as you grow, as you're able to do more things and do better and become good at something, you're going to be, most people won't notice. I remember one conversation I had with Jessica probably several months ago where she had said something along the lines of it's great how this show works and how we're able to take it from this point to this point to this point and get to the end. And I was like, well, yeah, I've practiced. And she had no idea that like, as we're doing this, I have a certain trajectory that I'm working for. And as I go, I work towards that. Yeah. And it was just crazy. I mean, it's not that Jessica didn't know or didn't have the knowledge of this, but it was like after I'd done 75 episodes of a podcast, I worked hard enough to know what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, that was one of the greatest compliments she didn't realize she was giving me.
Yeah.
Because she was like, it's crazy how we get to this point. Do you remember that conversation? Because I was like, yeah, I work really hard to do that.
Right. Yeah. With podcasting, it is. It's so nobody likes listening to themselves. Nobody likes watching.
Yeah.
Themselves.
I don't listen to myself.
At first. It's just it's a painful thing at first to go back and watch your shows or listen to your shows because we all don't like the sound of our own voice, so we judge ourselves or we fear the worst. But that's something that like it's very, very helpful. And the more that you do listen to yourself, the more you realize, hey, I'm improving. Hey, that's pretty good. It's not what in my mind, because we all go to worst case scenarios in our mind. Yeah. But when we go back to listen, we're like, oh my God, I'm doing all right. I'm starting to do better. Here's where I can improve. And it really does. It helps you improve.
And I will say, yeah, self-talk for sure. And I will say one of the things is for the first 40 or so episodes, I don't know how this works with music or anything else, because this applies to everything you do. But there comes a certain point where you stop listening to yourself because you're like, either I'm doing it or I'm not. And you have to listen to other people about what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. Yeah. Because, after a certain point, you're like, I'm doing everything right. I'm just
Totally. You got
great
to
at
learn
this.
from the feedback, and some feedback is good, some feedback is not. So it's not like all
Yeah.
feedback is. So you could have a show where one person was like, "Oh, you sucked that show," but yeah, 5 other people are like, "Oh, you're on fire," whatever. It's probably, if it's going to be leaning one way, then not every piece of criticism is you can take it in,
Some
but not.
criticism is stupid.
Yeah, some criticism is based on some personal reasons or some other aspect of it. So it can be easy to be affected by one piece of criticism and not realize that there's 5-10 other pieces of praise coming about the same thing. So while you do want to look at the criticism and you do want to improve, you want to make sure that we can focus more on the criticism than we can on the positive aspects sometimes. And some criticism is great, other criticism is not great.
Well, and not
It's
to mention the fact that you do this seems to be shunned in our society in some ways. But you have to make sure, like I said with the Joe Rogan advice, you have to make sure you're happy.
Of course.
Once you get to the point where you're considering that rather than what any naysayer on Twitter or some person in your group chat is saying,
Right.
it doesn't matter anymore.
Totally. He fucking does what's happening. And that's a very important. I try to think about that too. Like when I'm picking out stories, I try to think about stories that interest me, and instead of trying to choose stories that that's on their mind. Like I don't want to try and mold what is trending or whatever, because I know that's a propaganda engine. I don't want to try and like mold myself to that. I want to try and pick things that I find interesting, that I can have an emotional response to, that I can have an insight to. I don't always do it because it's easy to get caught up in the fucking generating propaganda. But when I do talk about stories that interest me, I feel so much better about the show. I feel it feels smoother. It feels like you pick these other topics, it's like, oh, I feel like I got to do this. I got to like. But when I can fucking pick the stuff, and I'm sorry, I see somebody said something about my swearing. I don't mean to swear a lot. In Monica and I show, I don't swear a lot, but I can be a little free with myself sometimes.
There's context for that. On another show, Stephen Ignoramus's show, The Daily Ignoramus, he has challenged himself to stop swearing, and he does 5 or 10 push-ups every time he says the F word.
So I'm gonna have a good workout ahead of me.
Right.
I will be honest though.
Push-ups.
The feedback we've received from you, particularly being on the show, is that people like that you're able to be looser here than you were.
Yeah, I can see that. I can rein in my swearing. I probably do a little better job of that if I had to. Yeah. Well, I'm a swearer. I'm definitely a swearer.
Well, it's like, and I think that that's what's interesting about doing the propaganda report the times I have is, you or Monica may not accept every story that I put, but some of them are generally there just because they make me laugh out loud.
Yeah, right. That's what I want. I want to find stuff. I try to do that too. The stories that make me laugh or that I think are interesting, or that I pick. It can be tough to pick stories that are relevant to people, and that's what I really would like to do. It's just the news is filled with so much junk that we think it's relevant to us, but it's only relevant to us because it's part of this tribal talking points that they put in people's heads. But I'm trying, like, how does this affect people's lives personally? Will it affect their lives personally? How would it affect their lives personally? It can be very challenging to find actual stories that can actually reach down and touch people, because all of it is just so propaganda based that it covers all that stuff up. They don't talk about it.
Yeah.
It's true.
But that's what's fun is when I've done it with you and with Monica, I love when you accept
the
my
show,
stupid
not
stories.
The show.
When we've done the dirty on the propaganda report. No, I've enjoyed that. Even when I'm this guest host, that I'm able to bring my flavor, which is like slightly irreverent.
You always bring
laughing at the system.
I love laughing at the system. I love mocking it. I think we have to mock it. So I always enjoy when you bring that angle.
Because that's what I do. I just mock them.
Like if we don't mock it, if we don't have fun with it, and some people can get black pilled or whatever. I'm not a black pilled person. I do understand the perspective that what people say who are black pilled, the power and whatever. But I don't think it's as comic book like villain as we make it out to be sometimes. I think that everybody's a human. They're all fallible. And I think that we have to laugh. We have to have fun
Yeah.
with it because
You
we
we
can't
give
gotta laugh.
them so much more power when we believe that we can't win,
right.
that they've
Yeah.
just got control over everything. Honestly, they're not that competent.
No.
Well, and
We
and
give
I've
them
told
way
this,
more credit than they deserve.
and I've told this story before, but as briefly as possible. When I was in high school, I dated a girl, and she had an older sister who was dating a guy who was absolutely terrified of her father. And I was able, within minutes of meeting this man, to make him someone who liked me and thought I was funny.
Yeah.
And that's humor and mocking
It's
of
great.
the
No,
system
it's
is
great,
the
yeah.
way to let people bring their guard down. So if you can do that, do that.
Totally.
Um,
It's I've been good with dads too because it's just you gotta be you gotta have fun with. You can't be fucking
Binkley
terrified.
is great with dads.
I'm great with dads. The best.
So we are nearing 3 hours, which happens every time you come on. It goes longer because we just love talking to you. But I do want, as quickly as possible, Jessica's story about her first kiss.
I was gonna say
Man, I
didn't
really thought I
need
was
to
gonna
hear
get
that.
out of
no,
that.
I've been
I
waiting
was-
for that.
I can't let you off the hook.
Oh no, I really thought I was off the hook too. My first kiss was in 8th grade. It was with a boy named Derek DePietro. Derek DePietro, if you happen to hear this, I'm so sorry. He was the dorkiest boy in 8th grade. And
Of course.
not that my social standing was that much higher or anything like that, but I don't know. I was a late bloomer compared to the other girls in my friend group as far as the French kissing thing, and that was really, really important for some reason. And so we set up this whole thing where we would kiss after school. And we met specifically. We weren't boyfriend, girlfriend, or anything like that. We just met after school at an appointed place to French kiss.
This
That's
is
such
the
a
most
movie
Jessica
scene. That'd be a great
Green.
movie scene right there.
So it was really like more of like a arranged marriage than anything. We just wanted to get it knocked out of the way so that we wouldn't be the dorks who didn't French kiss.
I
And
have to tell
so-
you, this is the
Awesome.
most Jessica Green freaking story I've
That
ever
should
heard
be in
in
a
my
movie.
life.
That should really be in a movie. That's great.
We didn't date or anything like we weren't dating or anything like that. We just had a pre-appointed appointment. To
It's
meet
like
each other
it's
after
like
school.
people who are like, look, if we're not married by this certain age, we'll get married to each other.
Right,
But
right.
a kiss.
And then I think the first actual kiss that I had was probably a year after that. I was in 9th grade, and I made out with a boy named Steve Casper after some kind of like church lock-in or something like that.
What a
I ended up
name.
Yeah, Steve Casper. Yeah, I ended up getting a lot of my early making out stuff
With friendly ghosts.
with at church groups or youth lock-ins.
Yeah, you can meet a lot of
Yeah.
people at the church groups.
Yeah.
That's
So
why a
Most
lot of
sin
people
happens at those
girls in
things,
college,
man.
yeah. So but I never saw him again after that.
Wow,
So
he left after that.
yeah, he left after that. He was like, I'm out of here.
Got what I wanted.
So I started dating his friend from that night. His name is John, I think. And then John told me that Steve told him on the phone he was going to kick his ass, which made me feel kind of good about myself.
Yeah, you got him fighting over you. Yeah.
Like, yeah, fight for me. So that never materialized. But yeah, so no, I had an arranged French kiss for my first kiss, which is kind of embarrassing, I guess.
Hilarious. That's a great story. That's
Yeah.
the best.
That's wonderful. Like, I honestly was like, whatever this is will be the most regimented thing.
That was awesome. Yeah, it was great.
No, yeah, there was no passion or youthful love, or it made me feel a
calculated.
certain way. I was just like, okay, we're both nerds. You'll be down for this.
Was it your
So
idea? Did you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I arranged this entire thing.
He was probably like, all right, yeah.
Yeah, he was. He was very excited about it.
Hell yeah.
Disappointed that we weren't boyfriend girlfriend after that, and I was like,
course.
no, We just
Ooh.
kissed.
He's like, but
It's
we
not-
kissed. And you're like,
Yeah, to him it was like we were
Yeah.
married in 8th grade now. That's 8th
Yeah.
grade marriage.
That reminds me. After I left college, I went and visited my brother in Los Angeles. And there was this girl who had a huge crush on me in college. And I knew that. I knew it.
Of course. They all.
It's
yeah.
one of the few times that I was
You're a
cognitive.
beautiful boy.
Yeah.
A beautiful boy. But I was cognitive enough, which is not true for the most of my life, that this girl liked me. You know, like I knew it. And I visited my brother, and it had been like a couple years since I dated someone, because like I'm choosy as hell. And I made out with her that night. And then when I was like, obviously this won't work because I live in Alabama and you live in Los Angeles. So let's just call it what it is. We made out one time. God, that girl never talked to me again.
Did she move to Alabama?
No, she just blocked me on everything. I was
No,
like,
it does. A lot of times when it's this is nothing. It's just we're cool, right? It's never cool.
do you
ever.
want to hear the worst part? I was not attracted to her at all.
Oh. Yeah, I wasn't attracted to Derek DePietro. He was just low enough on the social ladder that I knew he would accept my offer.
Oh my god! I wish this
Yeah.
was in a sitcom. This
Like I went up to
experience,
him
dude.
at school and I was like, "Hey, look, we're both dorks.
That's awesome.
We haven't French
That's so
kissed
great.
anybody."
Oh my
Yeah.
God. So you
I'm
just
gonna
you,
meet
you
you
didn't even
here.
really know. You just presumed he hadn't French kissed anybody.
Yeah, I knew. I mean, like I presumed.
He's like, wait
I
a
was
minute. How do you
right.
know?
I was right. And
Yeah,
you
you're
know,
right.
to be fair to him, I got made fun of for Frenching Derek DePietro. Derek DePietro did not get made fun of for Frenching me.
Yeah.
So like I definitely like, you know,
He
didn't
won.
gain anything out of that. He
so
won.
he told people
Yeah.
about it then.
Yeah, oh definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Like-
and I'll just, here's the deal. I am, I believe, 33 years old. There's no way to tell. I'd have to look at my birth certificate.
I don't remember since
But
the pandemic started.
French kissing is still awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. Right.
But
So
I
my-
mean, so interactive.
my
It's very
dad
interactive.
doesn't remember how old I am because like we've reached that point where he just like doesn't remember. So I
Yeah.
tell him I'm way older than I am just to fuck with him. He goes, what are you now? And I'm like, 42. He goes, you're not 42, are you? And I'm like, yeah, dude, I've been over 40. I'm not over 40. He's like, yeah, I've been over 40 for a long time. And he goes, how old am I? And I'm like, it's like, dude, get your shit together.
Yeah.
I told my dad the other day that I was 42, and he said, I'm a box of ashes. Stop talking to
Did
me.
respond. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
God dang, I love dark humor.
Yeah, it's dark humor.
So it's 3 hours. So we need
Yeah.
to stop
We need to wrap
before
this
people.
up, dude. We need to
want
wrap it
to
up and go
murder
look at
us.
We've
some
talked
cities on
about-
Twitter, right?
Talked about
No.
Derek DePietro. This conversation is at an end.
So the final obligatory question before, and I'm going to ask you this every month now.
I feel like I've been in
So-
your room. I've seen your room back there, Cam, with
Oh
the
yeah.
bottles on the wall. It just feels so
He
welcoming.
has to drink all of that before he moves because his mom won't let him have it.
Really?
Yeah,
Well,
dude,
yeah.
let's not talk about how sad my life is in detail. But
No,
yeah,
I'm very interested in him having to binge drink his entire liquor cabinet.
Yeah, I
within-
should do it. You should
a month
document
and a half.
that
Tonight,
live
man.
stream
Like-
wise.
I think this was at like here.
We have to
before I
do
started.
like an arduous journey where we help Cam drink his liquor cabinet.
An
Yeah.
arduous march. Also,
An
I
arduous
think we
march,
should
that is-
pair that with the fact that I have these ghost pepper chips, and just have an episode where I'm just uncomfortable the whole time.
What are the ghost pepper chips? What is that?
They're like Doritos, but they're ghost pepper.
Oh,
rather
They
you
than-
make
talking
your-
about the hot Doritos?
Yeah, they
Yeah,
make your
dude.
butthole hot.
The ones that are like a challenge you do on TikTok?
Yeah, I've got a bag of them. I
Oh,
feel like
God.
maybe
Why?
I don't know. Well, here's the deal. Okay, I've done ghost pepper before. The one time I did
You
it,
done
was-
weed before?
I have done weed. Yes,
The
and
weed.
It doesn't like me. But I did the ghost pepper challenge at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Oh yeah. I
And-
love Buffalo Wild Wings.
to anyone who's curious about ghost pepper or Carolina Reapers, which is even hotter, is there's a threefold process of pain. There's the pain in your mouth. There's the sourness in your stomach. And then there's the fact that capsaicin, the hot portion of spicy foods, it does not digest. And so there's a ring of fire that you have to deal with afterwards, which completely recontextualize,
Ring of Fire,
Johnny Cash's music. Yeah.
I don't need people like I'm like, I'm getting mad wings, but I'm like, no, I just want to have the rest of my day. I don't want my day or week to be ruined.
I don't need my food to hurt me.
Yeah, I don't need pain right now.
Here's the deal. I want my food to hurt me just a bit.
Yeah. Well, you should eat Stacey Abrams.
I like it. Yeah. Well, I could, but I don't want AIDS. So maybe I won't. But like I said, we are near the end. So let me ask you
to end on.
the question that you will officially ponder for a month each time is what, let's say over the last month, is something that has given you motivation, hope, etc., to carry on and keep doing what you're doing? What has been something that has made you go, you know what? The things I do are worth doing.
Are you starting with asking me that question?
Yeah, just you. I don't ask Jessica. She's
right. So whatever the past cynic. Month has given me inspiration to keep going. Specifically, well, it's okay. So I take my dad to therapy a good bit. He has a respiratory thing, and he did the first therapy session he did. He had been struggling. He did very well with it, and far beyond that. The doctor believed. He's like, yeah, he walked for this period of time. He did that, and I was like, really? Because he had struggled to do that, and he's had his ups and downs. He struggled with a lot of it, but seeing him be able to pick it up and continue to go out there and work hard and try to improve, and seeing him be able to do that kind of stuff inspires me a lot.
Awesome.
Well, I do have a thing that gives me hope if you want to hear it.
Let's hear it.
I am given hope by the fact that the official Twitter account for one of the major TurboTax, I'll just say it, had a Twitter user convince them to send him documents, and he says, I use Puma to do this. They said, what's Puma? And he said, putting my nuts in your mouth. And just just assholes and shit posters on Twitter giving it to the man. Fucking gives me hope.
Yeah,
I love you guys for that shit that you do. Keep doing it. Keep mocking the system. That's my white pill.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I will add one in, which is Vegas shit. But despite everything that's happened over the past year, in particular for me, I still find that glimmer of hope. I still find that little bit that says not only that I can do it, but that I can thrive. Even if like everything at the moment says, no, you can't, you fucking nerd. Like I truly believe that there is good stuff coming. And
there is.
I'm gonna live in that, because otherwise I'll live in darkness.
There is.
And sometimes it's a choice, man.
It is. And that's what I was about to say. It is. It's a matter of we can all it does at some point in time in all of our lives. Some of us are at a stage of our life where we haven't experienced yet. Some of us are at a stage of our life where we've experienced a lot of it, a lot of darkness. And we're all going to experience darkness. We're all going to experience sadness and tragedy. It is inevitable. And when I was young, I wanted to avoid that. That's the thing that I was afraid of the most. And it's something that it's life-changing for everybody. But like it doesn't take away the light, and it is a matter of we can all choose to see the darkness, and sometimes it can be easier to choose the darkness because you want to choose the darkness because you want to feel fucking sad, you want to feel mad, you want to feel angry, but that doesn't mean the light's not there, and it's the light is there, and choosing the light can be a very hard thing, especially when you're in a very dark place, but it can always you can transform the way that you feel by choosing to see the light and by choosing to act in accordance with ways that make you feel better, that help those around, because whenever we help people, we feel better. We fucking feel better when we help people, and it's not always easy to choose, but we can choose the light. You're right, Kim.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, with that, we didn't talk about love and our deep affection for each other as men quite as much as I assumed we would.
I was hoping, for at least a lot of, but I love you. I love you both. I love you, Jessica. I love you, Cam. And I appreciate you very much for having me on your show. I really, really do. I very much appreciate it. And I always enjoy talking to you guys. I think you guys are both brilliant. I think you're funny. I think you're smart. I think you got great insights, and I think you do a good show. And thank you for having me on.
Thank you. And no, I really do. Like, I've had a couple of fingers of bourbon at this point, which means I'm going to be loving. So prepare for that.
Buddy, no.
Yeah, I'm a sweet baby. But no, I do, like, when I made the Waco Red Pills for the show when it was called Make Liberty Great Again, I didn't expect that to go far. But Monica found them.
She talks about it all the time
and loved them. And then that led me to be like, hey, Monica, you want to come on my show and talk? Which led to me going, I should have Brad on. I don't really know him, but we should have him on separately because it's not just the Monica show. It's more than that. And I remember the first time we had you on, I was just like, dude, I just love this dude, man. I love talking to him. So I appreciate you. I love that not only are you willing to take up the slack for me when I'm in the middle of a move and through some kind of major life changes, but that I'm like, hey, dude, you want to come on once a month? And you're like, yeah, love that.
Yeah,
like the willingness, the brotherhood in that is just great. So I appreciate you in more ways than you know, and I'll be way closer to you.
I know you'll be just a couple hours away,
and so I'm going to insist that I did a Trump.
I know you
hand
did
motion there. I'm going to insist on this.
It's going to be the best insistence.
That you and Jessica at some point take me to Relapse, so I know what the hell's going on.
Well, hopefully we can get it back open. And
I was going to say, I don't know if it's
we can take
still there.
It's still there. It's still there. Okay. It's not currently open right now. It's weird. It's always weird. That's always the thing with an underground type place. But hopefully we can get it back open. But either way, we can all get in the same room.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is the boxing ring still there?
No, not. But that was great. There was a boxing ring in this comedy theater at one point in time. Just one day you show up, there's a freaking boxing ring there, which is what made this place great. Is that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But with that, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on. I can't wait to talk to you more. But if the listeners would like to see more of Brad's thoughts occasionally when he gets on Twitter, you can do that at Freedom Act Radio, which, by the way, until I think the last time you showed up, I didn't know there was a T. I thought it was Freedom Mac Radio.
Yeah.
And I didn't fucking understand it at all.
All right. Well, you thought it was Freedom AC? Radio?
Yeah, I thought it was I thought it was Freedom Mac.
Yeah.
And I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, you can follow him at freedomactradio.com. The Propaganda Report is a wonderful show. And the beauty of the show is that they give you the space and give you the tools to question the official narrative. So they don't force you into a box. They don't tell you what you should think about how this story or that story is supposed to go or what is true. They try their best to give you the tools to make those decisions on your own. And that's a beautiful thing because we're surrounded every day by alternative facts.
People trying to
as they were.
program our minds.
And so this is a chance every day, Monday to Friday, except for occasional weeks you do
Monday to Thursday, definitely, and some Fridays we do shows. Other Fridays we'll drop an interview or something else.
But for every day you have something that will challenge you to think more, and that's valuable in the very least. And the fact that Brad and Monica are both very passionate and smart shouldn't dissuade you from watching it. But beyond that, I don't typically shill other people's Patreons, but what Brad and Monica have going on in their Patreon is really cool. And it's something that I've emulated in ours, which is they have the disappearing patron parties. They have Zoom calls with specific topics and things that people are interested in, but you can directly fund what they're doing every month at patreon.com/propaganda report. So these are good people. I don't want to say they deserve your money, but they deserve your money. So give them your money. And also give us your money.
Binkley is great with dads. So that might be something you want to consider when donating your money.
Sure. I'll charm your dad.
Patreon.
But beyond that, since you're essentially becoming a part of the show at this point by coming in monthly, I'm going to make you sit through the rest of it. So deal with it.
I'm here, man. I'm happily here.
Deal with it, you handsome ass man. So upcoming, we have a lot of cool episodes coming. Next week, we're talking to Troy Frazier from Revived Thoughts. We had a great conversation with him in December about the real St. Nicholas, and we're doing the same thing with St. Valentine next week. And so those who are patrons will be able to watch that early because we're actually recording that on Valentine's Day with him. But the rest of you unwashed swine who don't pony up the dough, you're going to have to wait till Wednesday to watch that. And I, in the very least, will be in the chat. Jessica will come as soon as she can, if she does. She is an elusive little minx.
I will meet you behind the Graverette Middle School parking lot, though.
For a coordinated kiss.
To agree, right? I'm not that elusive.
Past that, we're going to cap off Black History Month with our friends Nick and Lizzie Picone. They are an incredible couple who are very interesting. Like, they're very different, but they're able to gel very well. And they are is that
the colonizer and his African American wife?
Yeah, dude.
That is,
They're an interracial couple, and I think that's a very interesting dynamic that we've talked about with them multiple times off air. But the Love Month plus Black History Month, I think that's a good conversation. Like, how does it work in reality?
That's great.
After that, we have the lovely Kat Kattinson coming onto the show. No, I don't believe that's her real name. I don't really know. But she was a transgender youth who decided that she was going to detransition and move away from that idea. And she has a lot to say about it. So I think that's very interesting, particularly because this is a group of people, a small group of people, who the leaders of thought and progressive activism don't want to exist whatsoever. So I'm very excited about that conversation. And past that, I've already told you. But what was that? But Monica Perez will be subbing in for Jessica on March 9th. What is it? What is it saying?
Is that? I don't know. It sounds like a lady going child.
I don't know if it's child or trial. I don't know what that is. Okay. But coming in mid-March, we have Monica Perez coming in to sub for Jessica. We may have an additional guest. We may not. Monica's interesting enough to talk to by herself at any point in time. So tune in for that. Beyond that, we have a Patreon. So if you want to get to know Jessica and I better, if you want to have an occasional Zoom party, where we play games, chat about what's going on in your life, what's going on in
Or
ours, etc.
I can just read all of my erotic Star Trek fan fiction.
Wow,
That's
there you
true.
go.
It's actually the longest fan fiction in history.
It's all
wild.
Guinan and Picard.
I
All
mean,
of it.
the way she uses those weird looking capitalist aliens in her fan fiction is just insane. You know, you wouldn't think they'd have the emotions that they do. but
I'm
they
in.
do. But if you want to
think
be a part of
Stacey
that,
Abrams has
No,
some
no, I'm
erotic.
totally. You got
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
but if you want to be a part of what we're building and what we're doing, patreon.com/the Mad Ones. If you'd like to rep us, wear a shirt, have a mug, have a tank top, which is the apex of male fashion, which my wife hates every time I wear. It's hilarious. She was like, "You're not wearing a tank top on your
Oh, my
show this
God.
week, are you?" And I'm like,
Imagine
"Oh,
if
yes,
I came
am."
over and she see two of us in those tank tops.
She'd be so
We
turned
should
on.
all wear tank tops.
But if you want one, wearethemadOnes.com/store will take you directly where you need to go. I am on Twitter at HamCarlos because I lost my Twitter for cracking wise at the what
Powers
is
that
he, the
be.
Prime Minister of Canada?
The cuck
What a
of Canada.
bitch. At him Carlos. Jessica's at Soup Canarchist for now. She might change that later. We'll see. I'll probably change my handle later too, because I'm not super thrilled with him Carlos, even though the image of
It's a pig in a
Pig
bowler
wearing
hat
a
waiting at
bowler
a
hat.
bus stop because he doesn't have a car.
it's a beautiful image.
He's a Ham Carlos.
But we'll see where that goes.
That's
We
funny.
do have if you're listening to us, you can watch us weekly at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time at youtube.com/the Mad Ones. We're also on Rockfin. We're on Odyssey. If you're watching us and you'd prefer to listen to us because you don't want to see Jessica's face all that often, I understand. She's beautiful. It's too much to take in. You can go to wearethemadOnes.com or on any podcatcher. We're on everything. If we're not on something that you look for, let me know so I can fix that. But beyond that, we do have a last thing I'll mention. We have a Bible study that we do every week where we talk about right now we're in the middle of Acts. We read through the Bible in 5 chapters a week. If we can get through it, usually that means that I have to be there, apparently, because Jessica just doesn't have the organizational skill to do what I can do.
Got through 3 chapters.
I could
Come
not
on
give you
now.
crap on that. But if you want to join that and hear my extemporaneous thoughts, as well as other thoughts, as well as everyone else in the group, it's a lot of smart people that are thinking about things that most people don't spend much time on. Just send me a message on Twitter at HamCarlos, and I'll get you connected in, and we'll talk about the Bible, baby. Beyond that, we're good. That's it. That's all I have to tell you. So, anything else you want to say, Jessica or Brad, to the people who are listening?
Just that if you're out there and you happen to see this Derek DePietro, I'm so sorry.
Love, have fun, smile. That's all I
Yeah.
have to say.
And so, with that, love, have fun, smile. You have the chance to be a light in the world and not to be a boring, cynical mess. And you know what? You should choose to be that light. Bye.